Hello, I'm Richard Dinnick, and I write for Big Finish and BBC Books, and you're listening to Travelling the Vortex.
Travelling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and landed at episode number 53. And I don't know about you guys, but I think a Vortosaur named Ramsey would make a pretty cool pet. I'm Keith.
I'm Shaun.
And I'm Glenn.
Where would we keep a Vortosaur? Let alone a Vortosaur named Ramsey.
Well, if you have a Vortosaur, you have to name it Ramsey. The question is, where do we keep it now?
Touche.
What else would you name a Vortosaur?
Spot.
You'd have to keep it in your TARDIS because I'm not sure your apartment is big enough.
I wish I could keep my apartment in my TARDIS because I'm not sure that my apartment is big enough.
That's a good point.
We were lamenting the lack of space actually just yesterday. We were sitting around going, we're not sold on this layout because it's just not working.
Really?
But we don't know how else we're going to...
I don't know what else you'd do here either.
Well, we were commenting...
I think it looks great.
We were at a friend's who also lives at the apartment for New Year's Eve. Or in the apartment complex for New Year's Eve, and I was just
He lives here just for New Year's Eve?
Yeah.
He just lives here for New Year's Eve. You heard right.
We were at our friend's apartment who also lives here in the complex for New Year's Eve.
He lives here in the complex for New Year's Eve.
No. There's commas in between there. We were at our friend's
You're
apartment.
just not coming across that way.
I think you're putting
Why don't you
it in the wrong
rearrange
order.
the...
We were at a
order.
friend's house for New Year's Eve who happens to live here in the apartment
That's
complex.
That just sounds weird. That flows from my mouth weird. Anyway, I was commenting how after being in this apartment for as long as I have and having come over to Shaun so often before that, his seemed really bare and open and big.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Well, you guys got a lot of stuff crammed in here now.
Well, keep in mind that I had, I don't know, like 5 households worth of stuff that I downgraded from my house and moved into an apartment, and then Keith joined me and brought his stuff.
And really, aside from the TARDIS in the corner, along with the coat rack and my DVD shelf in the other corner, or my computer desk in the other
bigger
computer.
and bigger. He keeps adding to it. Oh, and my...
Aside from the 2 corners at the far side of the living room, everything else is Shaun's.
It's mostly your shrine.
Well, that's...
Mister, I've only been watching Doctor Who for a year, and I've already got a shelf full of junk.
On top of the bookshelf.
We're talking about stuff that nobody can see, and we're boring our listeners.
It's your coffee pot.
What'd you guys do? How was your guys' week?
It was good.
It was all right.
We should say Happy New Year to...
Happy New
say
Year.
Happy New
It's
Year.
2012.
It is now
Prepare for the end of the world.
We only have 12 months now,
Yeah.
right, to live, so...
So we better make these podcasts very worthwhile and listen to them twice.
That's right.
Because you never know. This could be the last one. This could be the last.
This is the last one,
Traveling
because
Vortex.
whether the world ends or not, we're going on the Incan, or the Mayan calendar anyway, so... We're done. Because it runs out, we're done.
Yeah.
Except it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe I should rework,
No,
rework
it
the
starts
schedule
right
then.
over.
That's right.
Because if we're going to be done,
So, on November... we should totally
maybe I don't
do
want to
that.
watch Silver Nemesis.
On December 21st, we should re-release the very first episode we did because the show restarted.
Sounds good. That'd be easy. Make our job easy that way.
Wouldn't
Well,
we
and then
have-
we still record a new episode,
Would-
which was
oh,
kind of
okay.
like an April Fool's type thing.
Wouldn't we have to have 2,000 years of
on
static,
December 21st.
2,010 years worth of static, and then replay the first episode?
Now you're being
Yeah, I don't get it.
technical.
Because it was carved on a wheel, so it would come
It'd be-
around again. So you'd start over.
I see.
and-
I don't know if it's a full 2,000.
So we got to go all the way back.
You got to go
Yeah,
all the way
it would
back.
be
Yeah,
2000.
I don't know.
I don't think it's 2,000.
I'm speaking from what I
More
know.
than 2,000.
It's less than.
What's less than
It repeated in their own lifetime.
2,000? No, it didn't.
I thought it did.
No, I don't think so.
Anyway.
I'm going to have to add a wiki.
I'm pretty sure then that the 21st just happens. The 21st of 2012 just happens to be the end of that cycle and previous Mayan civilizations have repeated.
I think that's incorrect, but
I don't think the Mayans were around as a civilization for that long.
I think it was only a couple hundred years.
Oh no.
calendar.
That's not true at all. That's what's causing this whole uproar is the fact that they went from one point to another point, and it's the longest calendar in existence.
Because
the thing
it repeats.
is, no, not because it repeats. That's people are getting getting confused on this because. Yes, in theory, it should repeat because it still was built on a cycle. It just happens to be the cycle is like tremendously long.
Okay, so it's I Wikipedia'd it.
Okay.
The calendar is smaller cycles of 13 days, and
Right.
the 20 days were important components of the cycles.
Right. It still was secular, but there's like one huge giant mondo cycle, right?
Wibbly wobbly,
There
timey
was.
wimey.
Wish I could find that article that it's been years, like 2 years ago when this all first hoopla started coming about. I read a really good article about how the Mayan calendar works, and I'm certain that there's some massive calculation that brought us all the way up to this point, and then that's it. But the author of the article pointed out it starts over again too. It's part of
that's the main.
It's part of the
thing.
cycling process. Is that then you just start from zero again. So.
I'm a big fan
I'm
of
seeing
the cartoon that was on
819
Facebook.
counts.
819.
I'm a big fan of the cartoon that was on Facebook where the one Mayan turned to the other guy and goes,
But
look, I made a calendar, but I ran out of room around
Okay.
2012. Wow, that's going to freak some people out.
There are
I'm going to
20
come back to you,
there
but
are
you're
20
missing the point.
No, I
No, once you relate that to the Julian calendar.
yeah,
See, it's
I'll
not
have
800
to do
years,
more
it's
research.
800 cycles. But what they're saying is they plotted out 800 cycles, which would have been like 200,000 years or something like that. And they're talking about from the point when the civilization existed or when the calendar was created up until December 21st. That's what they're
The
saying.
calendar round dates is a date that gives both, I can't say these names, Tuzklin and Ha'ab.
I'm sure it doesn't matter. The Incans are gone, or the Mayans are gone. I keep
This
saying
date,
Incans,
this
it's
date
the
will
Mayans.
repeat after 52 years, 52 Ha'ab years, which, if I remember correctly,
Don't
How
even
long
act
is a
like
hob?
you know this. If I remember correctly from my days at the academy,
from reading earlier in this article,
From my research 2 minutes ago.
once again, you guys have ranged into an area
Yeah,
that
this
you
is
really
way
should
way
not
down
be
now.
talking.
Well, we were launched into the whole 2012 discussion, so that's all right. You guys went off on an apartment that nobody can see.
I could just post random pictures of
what
it.
we have.
You're going to have to now.
Everybody's seen our apartment.
No, I want pictures.
We've seen
I want
background pictures.
Sculptural pictures.
I mentioned to Keith the other day, we posted the Christmas party pictures, and I said, I wonder how many of our listeners are looking at that in the background going, wow, they got a lot of crap in there.
Or, how far is Topeka? What time are they at work?
All hours of the day. But that's okay, because Dr. Phil's going to come down and be a house guest. So,
Is he?
yeah.
When did he say that?
I don't know.
He tweeted that or something? Oh,
he
okay.
tweeted the prospect of
hey,
shopping
come
something
on
around
down.
it down. In
Oh,
this
that's right.
area.
You did mention
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah. No, come on, Phil. Come on down.
That'd be
We'd
awesome.
love to see you.
We welcome any listeners that would want to stop by.
Absolutely.
Come crash on the couch.
That's right. They are comfy couches, so
They're big squishy couches, too.
they're called the marshmallow couches.
Marshmallows. Now you have to take a picture of that, too. I want pictures and captions tomorrow.
I think I'm going to start
just said
referring to
they're-
them as the Slovene couch.
11 a.m.
I just said
Captures
they're called.
online.
You
I
don't
want
have
them
to see what
first
they
thing in the
look like.
morning. I want them up near time that the podcast goes.
If we don't post these pictures, people will come and visit us
Eh,
in order to see what the
I don't
apartment's
think
really
so.
like.
Oh, it's fabulous. There's a hot tub and a jacuzzi, and there's, an amazing laser light show. It goes on.
Is there any news this week, guys?
There isn't. That's why we're rambling.
Really
at the
nothing
beginning.
going on.
There's some major news, and for the life of me, I cannot remember
Yeah,
what it was.
I won't believe you
I-
until you do remember it because
it's
I
driving
think
me nuts.
I don't
I've been
remember
on,
it, but then again,
I've been on
I-
iPad this week. I've been on the scope. I mean, I've never been on the grid more than I have these last 2 weeks, and I haven't seen anything come out this week.
I didn't
so.
see anything, but then
Except
again, I wasn't
for-
really on the grid because I worked overnight all
We should,
week.
yeah, you were on a whole different opposite end of the day.
But I was up when a lot of the
That's true. You've been up with the same time the UK was up. There is big news. Sherlock this week. So.
No, that wasn't it.
No, I know that's not your big news, but I think that's mildly big since Sherlock returned, and it's related to Doctor Who in the sense that Steve Moffat also produces that show, so and writes for it.
I haven't seen the first episode yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
And it doesn't launch in the States until like next month or
what's his name?
March or May or something. No,
Gaddis is
Mark Gatiss,
is in it. I think in this first.
Could be. He's an actor too. He's in.
Well, he played the dwarf in Wedding of River Song.
Well, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but he was actually in the first version of... Dang it. I'll come to it later, I'm sure. But he was also in the first version of Storm Warning.
Really?
Yeah. There was an audio video that was made that was before Big Finish adapted it. And Mark Gatiss had a role in that as well as a character in it. Actually,
I didn't know it started off as anything other than a Big Finish.
It was called Audio Video, and I don't know much about it because I couldn't find much about it. But it basically, it was Sword of Orion was the one I'm thinking of. Yeah,
did you know he wrote 2 of the Sherlock episodes for Series 1?
Mark Gatiss?
Yeah,
he's the co-writer with Steve Moffat.
I didn't realize that.
I
figured 3 episodes.
I thought that's why we were talking about him.
No,
Sorry.
because you said. You just said he was going to be in it.
Oh no, he's been.
At.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, he's.
We were presuming you knew that.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Did you know that Mark Gatiss writes for Sherlock as well as Doctor Who, as well as acts apparently in both shows?
He was Lazarus.
He and Moffat are credited with creating Sherlock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Yes,
Lazarus Experiment, Lazarus.
Yeah,
really.
Mark Gatiss.
Now that I didn't know.
He's written a few Doctor Who's.
He's written several.
Yeah,
but I didn't know that. I didn't know
that's what he acted in.
I didn't know that was him.
Oh, he was. I'm sorry, I didn't hear
literally
you say that.
was.
He was actually in Lazarus. He's in.
Wedding of River Song. He plays the
Gantok.
That guy, the chess player.
Yeah,
he's been in a lot of
well,
of course, I suppose that's like saying
he's done in Doctor
Who. Barnaby Edwards, or not Barnaby Edwards, voice of the Daleks.
Well, not in Doctor Who. I mean, he's been related. He's been
affiliated
with Doctor Who
in
different mediums.
He was uncredited in the first episode of Sherlock.
I think he's maybe even written some of the novelizations.
I believe
he's written. I think quite a few.
Anyway, so Sherlock this week started yesterday in the UK. I think it aired today in Australia, and I believe it starts here on BBC America in like May or something. It's way off. I saw. What are you giggling at?
Tangenting again.
Oh, I'm bringing you back.
We just can't stop from tangenting again. I'm trying to sing that to the Muppets tune, but I can't quite get it right. It's in there. I just haven't quite unlocked it yet.
Tangenting again. You got to do it quicker though, because it's got to be together again.
Well, it starts
That's
slow.
The one you're going with.
It starts slow, but then it picks up.
But still, it's tangenting again. Well, okay.
Yeah. See that you're in the.
I'm in the zone.
Get that out of here.
We're going to relate things to Muppets for another 3 or 4 weeks, aren't we?
At least.
And then it will come out on DVD.
And then we'll do it again.
So expect 6 months.
Well, we got some feedback before we launch into our big finish for the year. It's the beginning of the year.
Feedback. Oh, I get to read the feedback.
We got some
first
feedback.
One,
I finished it for you. Got all excited about reading feedback.
I get to read feedback this week. I'm excited.
You always get to read feedback.
I didn't get to read any last week.
Well, that's because we were... there was one that required you not to read.
Yeah, there you go. This comes from Holly Mac. Or Holly was from Wisconsin. Or not Glenn's Holly. She writes, "Hey guys, loved your Christmas Carol commentary side trip, as well as episode number 52. Glad that all of you had great Christmases. Christmases. Christmas. What's the plural of Christmas? Not that I'm doubting you, Holly.
I'm pretty sure it's Christmases.
Holly wrote Christmases. I'm sure she's right. It's like a gaggle of Christmas. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? A flock? I don't know. See, Glenn doesn't get any of these jokes now. He used to chuckle every now and then at me, but now he doesn't because he has a new toy and he plays with it during the podcast. So he
figure out why I can't.
I
can't figure out why I don't have Holly's email. Anyway, go ahead.
I have it right here. I can read it
apparently you do.
Oh, you mean the specific email?
Yeah, I don't have the specific email here.
Well, let me read it to you,
My
Glenn.
wonderful device.
Apparently it's not that wonderful.
Apparently not.
I had a fanish Christmas as well. I got the updated Doctor Who encyclopedia from a few of my college friends who also enjoy watching Doctor Who. My parents got me the Series 6 soundtrack and the anniversary editions of The Muppet Movie and The Great Muppet Caper. I did enjoy The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Loved the opening sequence with Madge when she tells Cyril that he has to go out and help the Doctor and what to tell his father. And when the dad comes in and asks about Madge, all he says is, out. Straight, simple, and to the point. But then again, he was looking through the telescope when Madge was talking to him. Love the hammock scene when the Doctor was giving the family a grand tour of the castle. At least they weren't bunk beds. Also, the ending when the Doctor shows up at Amy and Rory's for Christmas and then realizing that he does have a family. I was with you all as well when Amy opens the door. I was wondering, wow, I hope Rory's there. And then I was cheering when Rory comes up behind Amy. He's still alive. I've listened to quite a few of the 10th, 11th audiobooks, and I just finished listening to the 4th Doctor Who Hornet's Nest saga. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on Big Finish audio dramas. May have to try a few of those out. Holly from Wisconsin.
Yay. Thank you, Holly.
And I remember Holly hit upon a couple of items that I think I kind of subconsciously wanted to make sure that I pointed out when we talked about Dr. Widow and Wardrobe and didn't. So it's nice to hear.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. She did. She hit on
Because Cyril was fantastic.
It's always it was really difficult to get feedback in before hand this week because we watched it literally 2 hours before we recorded
not
that
even
night. So sometimes it's really nice when Holly sends feedback prior and she's seen what we're talking about because a lot of times she'll hit on things that I feel we might have forgot in some of the podcasts. So we're just doing it retroactively this week. So.
Which we'll have a bit more of that. A couple other people write in about the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe.
That's right.
Our next bit comes from Mark.
Mark!
He says, hello, comment, question. He literally does. It's not making fun of you.
I've stopped
he is making fun of you.
He's making fun of him. I'm not making fun of him.
Mark is making fun of him now. So.
I hope that you guys had a great Christmas. You certainly made my Boxing Day as I had to take a 3-hour train ride to see my family in the country. Had planned to put some Big Finish onto my iPod the morning of the trip, but it turned out I had left my iPod my laptop at a friend's house.
Oh, no!
Thankfully, Traveling the Vortex was on iTunes. Ready to download. Thank you for saving me from having to stare at the lines in the middle of the road for 3 hours. I had 3 or 4 episodes to catch up on, so the things that I will discuss could be from a discussion from weeks ago, so I apologize for that in advance. First of all, I had no idea that Tom Baker was from Liverpool, and it turns out he grew up on the same street as my grandfather.
Really?
It was good of him to mention that now, after I've been a Whovian for so long.
I can see Mark doing that, too. He comes home for Christmas, kicks open the door. Grandpa, what's all this about? Did you know this guy or what? Oh, you did?
Second of all, I was just wondering if you guys had started watching Gavin and Stacey. And if so, how are you coping with the Welsh accents? I have been to Wales hundreds of times, but I never before have heard such a strong, confusing accent like the one Stacey has in the show. Well, Glenn and I have watched a little
Glenn
bit.
and Keith have. I have not yet.
I'm not bothered so much by it.
I think the difference for us, since we live in the States, they don't seem as different.
Yeah, they're not as distinctively different in
Yeah.
the dialect. I mean, I notice it, but I think
it almost just seems to me like a thicker British accent. In general.
That's just it. I don't want to offend anybody in the UK, but I think as Americans we struggle to maybe comprehend some of the British accent or British words anyway that are in there, and so I think we're
it's more
equally
the slang we have more trouble with.
Exactly.
Than
so we're equally
dialect,
struggling with both sides of it. So I agree with Keith. I think it's more, I don't want to say it's a heavier British accent because I don't think it really is because it is Welsh. But a Welsh accent, but it's noticeably different to me. But I don't struggle with it any more than I do some of the British, English accents as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've never noticed that, Mark. That's interesting. I mean, it certainly wasn't. It wasn't there and talking like this, like they did in Delta and the Bannermen. So it's not that.
Yeah. And if you like Gavin and Stacey, I would strongly recommend the TV shows Outnumbered, The Royal Family, Him and Her, and Not Going Out. They're all British sitcoms, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the simplicity of them. Another one I think we talked about is Coupling, which Glenn's watched all of, haven't you?
Yep.
And I've watched up to midway through season 2.
I think there's 4 seasons total.
And I've really enjoyed that. That's a fantastic show. Of course, it was also written by Stephen Moffat.
You're up through season 2. Oh, I won't tell you that. There's something I was going to tell you that kind of ruined the series for me. But
well, then, spoilers.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it.
Also, Shaun.
Yes.
Keith, pause. Wait for Shaun to say, oh. Just kidding. I'm sure he wasn't that predictable. Good job, you.
I try and remain not quite the cusp of everything.
I just wanted to say your story for our project was brilliant.
Aw.
And a perfect way to wrap up Series 1. If you're interested, then it would be an honor to have you write for us again in the near future.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And I see, I was invited this time. I didn't invite myself.
You were invited this time.
Which
We didn't thrust you upon them.
No.
Did you get a chance?
I haven't read it yet. I apologize. All over, I
did read Cyberman
had
Bomb.
a momentous
undertaking.
accomplishment this week, and that was I finished Cyberman Bomb.
When you got to the end, did you hear in your head, blink, as the achievement unlocked for you?
Yeah.
And you thought, damn, that was a tough one.
No, it wasn't that bad. It's not nearly as long as we make it out to be.
I caught up fully, fully as of yesterday.
I haven't read the new one yet.
Neither have I, but on Doctor Who Reincarnated.
And I'm torn now.
We had a lot of downtime at work.
I did have a lot of downtime at work. Honestly, I read it during the shows because it's 4 hours long.
Yeah, 4 hours of a show, too.
And I've enjoyed all the stories, and especially yours, Shaun.
Well, thank you.
It was really cool to see all the throwbacks you throw in there.
I did work hard on it.
That's all the spoilers I will say.
I'm actually very torn because the new Reincarnated story has hit, and it's apparently part 1 of 2, and the next one won't be up until February. And I was like, no! So now I'm torn. Do I read it now, which I really want to, or do I wait until I can have that instant gratification of the second part? Because it would be, I don't know. In my head, I've already built it up. It's going to be as epic as Best of Both Worlds Part 1, and then it will end, and I'll have to wait 3 months to find out what happens next season. So I don't know.
For those that didn't catch that, that's a Star Trek reference.
Mark your cards accordingly.
Well, I think that's everything. Thanks again for the brilliant podcast episodes. I hope you guys had a great Christmas. From Sir Mark McMarmite, who spells favorite with a U. Wow, my title gets longer each feedback.
Real quick, speaking of Marmite, of all things, we did have a story from the after Christmas special recording that we didn't pass on yet. That our continued foray into British foods that didn't go well.
I forgot about that because I didn't get to taste it. I didn't miss anything. But
That's right. You were still.
I was still in pain.
You were still in pain that night. So and we had Sarah went out and bought crackers, which we talked about, the little popper things, and I went out and acquired Jelly Babies because that's proper
Which
British.
we did talk about the Jelly Babies.
We did talk about the Jelly Babies, and I also picked up Jammy Dodgers.
Jammy Dodgers.
For us to have on the show, and we didn't eat them on air. We probably should have.
It would have been a great reaction.
We
from everybody.
were all
Can we
kinds of
just
excited.
Can we just say what is wrong with you Brits?
I'm sorry. On the show, it looked much more red than when it came out of the package.
I don't know that they ever showed them.
Yeah, he
It's
held
a
one up.
self-destruct button.
Yeah, in the
In
Dalek
Victory of the
episode.
Daleks.
Yeah,
It's
he's
a Jammy
holding it.
Dodger.
Yeah, he's carrying it around.
That's what he uses to bluff the Daleks.
Yeah,
Is a Jamie Dodger.
that's his self-destruct.
That's about what they're good for. Bland. It was like stale shortbread with a melted gumdrop.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
And not flavorful.
And not a flavorful gumdrop, like a gumdrop
No,
like you
it's-
maybe found on the bottom of your car that was stuck
Do you
to something in the
suppose?
sun. I don't know. It was,
Do you suppose it's our fault though, as Americans, that food makers here just? Now that I think about it, everything here is like so sweet, and I mean, and
very
everything
possible.
that I eat that's British is like the opposite. Have we been like
sugar poison?
programmed? Well, have we been programmed over here that everything has to be like
Even to some extent,
sickeningly
the
sweet in order
Jelly
for us
Babies
to enjoy
aren't
it?
super sweet.
No, the Jelly Babies aren't sweet either. I mean, they are,
They're
but
sweet,
they're not that.
super
They're
sweet.
not that sugary.
They're not as sweet as they
Yeah.
would be in America.
Yeah.
that's
Well,
true.
you know,
That's a
like
good point.
like gumdrops or whatever.
Even
here,
gummy
they're-
bears.
Gummy bears are, I think, a different.
Gummy bears are not food.
I think gummy bears are
Are you
different.
saying Jelly Babies are food?
Hell yeah. Jelly babies are a whole food group on their own.
Yeah, I don't know. Sean likes them a lot.
I like them a
they're,
lot.
They're fine.
The same category,
I
in
don't
my
hate
opinion,
them,
as
though.
any other gummy foods.
They're not gummy.
They're close enough to that
Jelly
consistency.
babies are not gummy.
They're that close enough to that consistency.
No, I think jelly babies are more.
The gummy category encompasses a
doesn't.
large
No,
variety other than gummy bears
you're
and
gonna
gummy
lump
worms.
things like orange slices into that, and they're totally not. It's a different
I
consistency.
have to agree with him.
I guess it would be closer to
Gumdrops and orange
gumdrops,
slices and things
yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. They're a different. I mean, they are all in
Gelled,
the
but
gelled
not-
family.
Maybe gelled
but
would be a better title.
Gummies are the really rubbery eraser texture.
Gummy worms, gummy bears.
Gummy worms, gummy bears. Yeah. The fruit, all the various numbers of kinds of fruit they have.
Anyway, so we failed miserably on the Jammy Dodgers. We were not a fan of
No,
those.
we
And
weren't
you
fans.
could very well be right. Now, what's interesting is Julian went to Brits in Lawrence, and he brought back Curiosity Cola, just because the name attracted to him. He was like, yeah, sure. And we popped this thing open, and it was curious. It was
Hence the name.
the closest we could come, and Will had to kind of pin me down on it because I tasted RC Cola mixed with something else, but I wasn't quite sure, like original RC Cola.
Mm-hmm.
And Will said it tasted like original RC with sarsaparilla. So if you can kind
So
of,
it's sweeter than
it's
maybe Coke or Pepsi.
sweet. Well,
Sarsaparilla's sweet.
it had the tang of sarsaparilla.
Oh, okay.
But more of
Is sarsaparilla tangy?
Yeah, I think
I don't think
it's
I've
got a
ever
bit
had
of- It's got a bit of a
sarsaparilla,
bite.
so-
that effervescent
Yeah,
kind of
it's like
kick to
to me. It's a.
How do you
it's
describe
root- it's,
sarsaparilla?
well, yeah, sarsaparilla is root beer without the edge to it. It actually has all of that tang to it instead of the bitter edge to it that a lot of root beers have. So
I probably won't like that either.
that sounds intriguing. I think I'll try that.
You might try that next time and see what you think of it. It wasn't horrible, but it also wasn't something I think I would go out of my way to purchase.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but no Jammy Dodgers.
no,
That's
Jammy
an
Dodgers
utter
was
fail with us.
Utter fail.
No offense to anybody that likes
And I'm so disappointed because the doctor keeps throwing these things out. Oh, Jammy Dodgers. It's like, yeah, the doctor likes Jammy Dodgers. They must be awesome. Not so much.
Has the doctor eaten Marmite?
I don't know. I don't believe so.
Well,
He does love a good cup of tea, but
he's batting 50-50 then.
Should we move on with feedback since we've tangented again?
tangent in again. See, still not right.
Next one's from John Boy.
Yes, John Boy.
And is this the one from the 28th? I want to make sure I got
Yes.
the right stream here. I found my emails.
That's the only one from John Boy.
Oh,
this
okay.
week.
John Boy writes, actually, that's not true. John Boy writes, I went back and watched Caves of Adrazani, and I was mistaken and had seen it before. He had said when we talked about...
Oh, that's right. He said that he didn't watch that
He
one.
hadn't seen it, so he went back and watched it and discovered that he had. He says, I think that Stephen Moffat dropped that reference in the Christmas special to fix the opening. I'm going to try not to spoil anything as I know that Keith has not seen it yet. Toward the end of part 4 of Caves, the Doctor mentions that he can store oxygen for several minutes, thus explaining how he was able to survive in the vacuum of space for so long. I just wanted to mention this and see if that fixes some of the major problems for you guys that you had with the Doctor, the wardrobe, or the Widow in the Wardrobe. Talk to you guys later, John Boy. I also want to mention that the Doctor also survives in the vacuum of space for a substantial amount of time in Fort of Doomsday as well, which I had forgotten about until I was listening to a Fort of Doomsday, which I had forgotten about until I was listening to a podcast this
which
week.
Doctor is that?
That is Baker, right? Fort of Doomsday was Baker.
No, that's
one I've never heard
Fort
ever
of
mentioned.
Doomsday?
Fort of Doomsday?
That's Davison.
Oh, it is Davison. No, I'm sorry. It is Davison.
Davison was all about holding his breath, man.
Yeah, apparently so.
It-
So
apparently-
He could save the universe with a kettle and some string.
the Fifth Doctor was able to hold his breath for long.
Large
and,
lung capacity.
and apparently no oxygen.
It wasn't even the oxygen thing that was the problem for me. It was the plummeting
pressure.
to the earth.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there now.
Well, and that was I got into it, and I didn't get into it, but I was messaging back and forth. I'm going to see if I can find who it was now on Twitter with somebody who commented, and I said, "Oh, actually, John Boy fixed that for us because he pointed out that this happened and blah blah blah." And he's like, holding his breath, maybe screaming and flailing about. I don't think he's storing much oxygen. And I was like,
Oh, touche.
all right, you're gonna throw that one up there, huh? Okay,
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm not sure who it was now.
Our next pick comes from Chrissy.
Hi, Chrissy.
Are you doing Michelle's back to back then?
Yeah.
Okay.
She says, well, actually, we'll let Shaun read this one.
Yep.
Because that will go in the correct order. Because we're going counterclockwise now.
There's a method to this?
There is a method.
Chrissy
Method
writes,
to Keith's madness.
Hi, Vortex boys. In all the hubbub of Christmas, I forgot to send you this link. During our discussion of the Shadow Proclamation scene in The Stolen Earth, you mentioned that it was a little disappointing. I don't know if you knew this, but RTD initially intended to make that scene a little like the Senate in Star Wars, with all kinds of different aliens sitting around in council session. Budget restrictions made sure that it didn't happen, which is a shame because the scene might have been better if RTD had got what he wanted. We all know how Doctor Who gets along on his production budget. But it's still a pretty good scene. However, RTD drew up a sketch of what he intended, and it's posted on a TARDIS wiki. If you've never seen it, here's the link. The link is just the image, so Keith doesn't accidentally get spoiled for the specials. You hear that? Stay off the internet.
I haven't looked at the specials.
I'm glad you haven't. And we will post the link to the picture.
I looked at the picture. It's kind of cool.
It is very cool.
I like how there's a giant adipose. So that's what they look like when they're full grown.
Full-grown adipose.
Not as cute.
My only complaint with the photo is that there are many of all of the alien races that it seems to me that would be represented by this. That several of them, I don't know if they necessarily should be part of that.
Slitheen?
Well, I'd almost allow the Slitheen, but
I guess because
Cyberman is
we are dealing with
weird
a
one
family.
there. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it would be like a Dalek showing up and going, "Yeah, I have a vote on the council." Really?
You're who the council's fighting.
Galactic UN Resolution 5. Veto! It's like, what? It's for the good of everybody. Veto!
What they did here in this image is they've just taken all of the past aliens.
It's a sketch.
They've done. Because they've drawn the...
Well, it's the Krillatine. And,
well, look, and there's the Gelf.
Yeah, there's a Gelf in there as well.
I'm assuming he would have been green.
There's a Milkman. That's what he looks like, Milkman.
And the pterodactyl from Torchwood.
No, that's not. That's the
Krillatine. Krillatine.
From School Reunion.
I guess upside down it looks like a pterodactyl.
Somehow I don't think that the... what were they called? The Reapers and... I actually... We're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the Vortosaurus is what I think of as what the Reapers were in Father's Day. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get there. As to your question, which classic Who story features an actual police box? I don't think there are any Peter Davison stories like that.
I wish Shaun. I wish you had come up with it because I couldn't think.
I'll do some research.
I still
this week
went
and see
back
if
through. This is just the recesses of my mind, and you know how bad my memory is. Couldn't even remember who was in Ford Doomsday, but I don't recall in any era just having just a police box. But
I could have sworn there was one.
Maybe
it's
we did
late.
see the police, the TARDIS used as a police box.
Well, there have been times where the police box has been mistaken for the TARDIS has been mistaken.
Maybe it's a late Tom Baker one because I want to say that Tegan made a phone call from the side of the road.
That
sounds
that
like
is
maybe
Logopolis, and it's actually the TARDIS. She goes into it, and then remember that's the TARDIS in the TARDIS
right.
because the Master's TARDIS is inside.
Yeah.
And so it's materialized.
I don't know. I'll do some more research on that.
The only time I can think of is the not Unquiet Dead. You Are My Mummy. Is when the closest I've seen is when the Doctor uses it as the phone on the outside, which never works.
It's not supposed to work.
Yeah. So that's the closest the TARDIS or a phone box has been used in my.
So now here's a question: is did they actually? Now I just thought of this. Did they actually build a non-hero prop police box?
I'm sure that was the.
I mean, is that the actual prop? Because I would think,
from what I've seen, just from the effects, they just put something green in the back of the back wall of the TARDIS when they open the doors to have it extensive.
They don't have an image graphic or anything like that. It's just a green screen that they insert
green
later.
Screen. They probably
sure
impose the.
That would be the easiest and the cheapest. To do.
Would be the cheapest to do it that way. So.
Not to mention, they probably have 2 or 3 TARDISes and. TARDIS.
I just wonder if they had to,
because also a different.
They got the script and went
because there are.
Oh man, we got to build another TARDIS. Except we don't.
I'm sure they got a few of them.
What do we put on the?
I think
we paint the back wall black and put some clipboards on it. It'll be fine.
Well, there's also been several kind of different angles, so a straight just wallpaper wouldn't work.
Yeah.
You need the green screen to make sure you got the angle of the inside correct.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm breaking more walls for you.
Yeah. The only one I could think of that would come close would be Black Orchid, when the police think that the TARDIS is a police box, but they have no idea what a police box is. Are you sure you weren't thinking of a Tom Baker story? The idea of the Doctor stumbling... I'm sorry, am I too far away?
Yep.
Do I need to go back?
Nope.
The idea of the Doctor stumbling into a real police box, thinking it's the TARDIS, sounds more like a Douglas Adams trope. Can't argue with that. Excuse me.
It's not any of the Baker stories, though, for sure.
I do have a few thoughts about the big... Well, not any of the Douglas
Baker,
Adams.
Douglas Adams
There you go.
stories. Sure is what I meant.
I do have a few thoughts about the Big Finish stories you're reviewing this week. The best is arguably Storm Warning. It's a great reintroduction to the Eighth Doctor in audio format, and a lovely introduction to Charlie Pollard. Sword of Orion is pretty good too. The Cybermen are very well realized in audio format. I was a little disappointed in the Stones of Venice, but maybe that's because I just rewatched Vampires of Venice at the time, and I was a little tired of hanging out in Venice. The audio stories with 8 and Charlie are among my favorites, after the 5 and Nyssa stories. And I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about them. That's it for me. Good to hear you all had a good Christmas, and best wishes to everyone for a wonderful New Year.
Thanks, Chrissy.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chrissy.
I hope you had a nice Christmas, too.
And a Happy New Year.
And best wishes to you for a Happy New Year. Well, we'll get to our thoughts on the Big Finish in a minute. But first,
I can't wait.
Michelle
Champing at the bit here.
sent in some feedback.
Hi, Michelle.
You got both pulled up?
I do.
Okay.
Oh, am I reading this one? Sorry.
Yeah.
Michelle says, here's my review of The Doctor, the Wardrobe... I keep trying to put those out of order. The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Oh, man, where to start? First, Androzani Major. I had to explain that reaction to my boyfriend.
Dump him.
Second...
You don't even know the reference. What are you talking about?
No, it's because he still doesn't like 11.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You're still on that. All right.
Still on that.
Okay.
Second, I guessed about the female equals strong, male equals, I think she meant weak here. She has strong, but male equals weak. When the tree said that the Doctor was weak and Lily was young but strong. I also guessed that Madge had pulled her husband's plane through the vortex. While that's not exactly what happened, it's close enough. Also, there has been someone named Madge in Doctor Who, Lady Madge Cranley in Black Orchid. I learned this watching the Black Orchid with commentary.
Well, you
Michelle.
like Black Orchid enough to watch it with commentary?
I'd watch
Hey,
it with
Black-
commentary.
No lie.
And Black Orchid is pretty good.
When we get done with them all, that's the next plan. We're going to go back and start all over again in the same order and watch them all with commentary.
There you go.
I'd be actually okay with that.
She goes on to PS here. I've asked my boyfriend to send in feedback explaining why he doesn't like the 11th Doctor.
Haven't seen the feedback yet, so no
we haven't
justification
seen it
yet.
yet. So, let me read the second one.
Yeah, go ahead.
She did come back and write again that I realized that there were some things I forgot to say in my last feedback. I have joined the ranks of those who listen to your podcast on long trips and have listened to episode 52 on a trip down to Michigan on December 27th, along with the 2 Big Finish audios we were supposed to listen to. Michelle's doing her homework.
Yeah, she is.
I thought the audios were great. I've enjoyed all the ones I've listened to so far, including the 5th Doctor ones I've already listened to. Are there any plans to review 5th Doctor audios, or are you sticking with the 8th for this foreseeable future? Michelle, like anything else, we're traveling the vortex. We're going to be jumping around. So, if that answers your question, I can't tell you exactly when we'll be seeing the 5th Doctor come down the line here soon, but we will be reviewing some 5th Doctor stuff as well.
Episode 63.
Well, I saw Spare Parts is on there, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
10 episodes.
My favorite Big Finish.
Michelle and Chrissy will be happy.
Yeah, Chrissy's got another Davison fan in her camp. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, thanks for writing in, and
Yes.
we're looking forward to your boyfriend's rebuttal on why he does not like the 11th Doctor. Or Keith is looking forward to the rebuttal.
And I will counter and prove wrong.
Keith's already got a reply letter typed up. It's just, you are
just
so
waiting.
blank. I'm waiting for the blank to make sure that you blank don't know what you're blanking about. He's going to fill in the blank once he gets your email.
Well, moving on, this is our Big Finish show. Sean's idea was to have a big finish at the finish of the year or the end of the year. And
Although
although this is technically
our anniversary episode,
because not only did we not record last night because Keith was sick, now it's the second day in the new year. But this is our big final episode.
And regardless, 52 would have been the big finish to the first year of our
That's
podcast.
right, our first full year of
But that's
reviewing.
okay.
No, because you have to have 52 episodes in a year. So,
Yeah. Wouldn't the big finish be the last of the...
oh, you're right.
Yeah, 52 would be the last one. So
I don't know. I can't,
either way, it doesn't
I can't
work.
keep track of daylight savings time. You think I'm going to remember an epiversary? Come
But
on.
we did listen to these in the end of last year, with the exception of you, I think, who was catching up on Sunday.
I finished
today.
mine tonight.
You finished
When,
tonight.
when Keith
Well,
sent out the text and said, "Can we
you went-
not record tonight? I'm not feeling very well." I was like, "Woo!" Because I'd only had about 40 minutes of Stones of Venice listened to at that point. So I looked at Mel like, "We're on fuck." Yeah, we actually finished it about half an hour before you arrived, so it's still cutting it close.
But speaking of Big Finish, Dr. Phil, good friend of our show,
Oh, yes,
went
Dr.
to Chicago TARDIS a few weeks ago, back in November, over Thanksgiving weekend. And he had the privilege to sit down with a person that has written for some Big Finish, and that's Richard Dinnick. Richard Dinnick's an author, British writer, and he's done several, forms of media, which he'll talk about in the interview. But he's done novels, audio dramas, short stories, and comic strips. And he works in science fiction, fantasy, and thriller. And he, in particular, has written one thing that listening to this interview really piqued my interest, and that's the Big Finish Companion, which he's going to talk about as well. So,
cool.
We'll let Dr. Phil take it from here.
Writer Richard Dinnick is a freelance writer who's expressing his personal opinions in this interview, and that they do not necessarily reflect the opinions of either Big Finish Productions or the BBC. Well, for the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance, this is Dr. Phil, here seated with Richard Dinnick to talk about the Big Finish Companion Volume 1 and his other work. So welcome to the show.
Hi, Dr. Phil.
How did you come to write such an expansive work on the work of Big Finish, and how long did it take?
Wow. It took 2 years of my life to do it. And it's all my own fault, because I was pestering Jason and Nick and David Richardson for ages to do a follow-up to Ben Cook's really fantastic inside story, which is still available. And they said, well, no, that was very much a warts and all book, and it was... I think if you printed it these days, it would probably be vaguely libelous, but because it was very much telling it how it was. And I don't think that in this day and age, and back then Doctor Who was off the air, and I don't think it would get past Cardiff these days. But so this is a different beast. It's more of an episode guide. So we look at the individual stories, but not in as much depth as the inside story. I think the inside story devoted like 2, 3, 4 pages to each story. This has got a page per story, but we don't just cover off the Doctor Who main range. We have the Companion Chronicles, we have the Lost Stories, we have Dalek Empire, we have Sarah Jane Smith. So it's everything that Big Finish does for Doctor Who, and then Sapphire and Steel and Robin Hood and Sherlock Holmes and everything else.
Did you start from just doing the Doctor Who things first and then doing those
Well,
other
it's funny because having pestered Jason and everyone for so long, 2 years ago at Galley, Jason said to me, yeah, we want to do it. So then I started doing it in March, and I did start off with the Doctor Who because it was I think important psychologically to get because we do 75 of the main range, main monthly releases. We do 1 to 75. So it was important to get 75 done in my mind, so that was it's about a quarter of the book roughly. So that was a quarter of the book done.
Wow.
So that was so to get that done was great. The trouble was that we looked at the time frame, and David and I said, well, so how soon do you think we can do it? And he said, well, this was March, just after Galley, and David said, so how soon? And we looked at the timetable, and we said, well, what about July? Does that sound so in March, April, May, June? 6 months. That sounds reasonable.
But that before you realized how much research there
Yeah,
was to
well,
do.
the thing, what we didn't realise as well was because we'd said, right, we're going to have a full synopsis of each story. So that's what the Inside Story didn't have, was a synopsis. It was a lot of background and a lot of interviewing with people, which is still in there in this book. But what it didn't have was a synopsis, a proper synopsis of the whole story, complete with spoilers and everything. So I had to make sure it was right. I had to go back and re-listen
Wow.
to all the audios again, which is no
small task.
no small task. I mean, it's not a pain in any way, but it did take a phenomenal amount of time. Yeah.
So, and also to make sure that all the synopses are told in the same sort of style. And
Yeah,
everything, too.
exactly. Yeah.
And then after that, there was all the rest of the work.
Well,
to
then,
do.
yeah, well, exactly. Then you had to listen to it and synopsize it. Is that a word? It is now.
We're in America. It's okay.
That's
You can
okay.
make up words all the time.
Excellent. So having done that, so at the same time that I was listening to the audios and writing the synopses, I was also emailing and calling all the writers and the actors and the producers and the script editors and the sound guys and the cover artists, and speaking to all of these guys and just speaking to hundreds of people. And arranging interviews and stuff like that. I mean, Gary Russell was very generous with his time, and we had a lovely afternoon on Cardiff Bay, having lunch and just talking about Big Finish, because obviously he played a massive part in the first 8 years of Big Finish, was it? Anyway.
Yeah. Huge.
Yeah.
So it tends to tell things in order of story release. So you don't have to worry about the stories of the origins of Big Finish, which would probably be
we do talk about the origins of Big Finish. We go right back to the beginning. So there's an introductory when we're introducing the Doctor Who main range and the Bernie Summerfield range, because that's in it as well. Then we do talk about how Big Finish started and how they got the Doctor Who license in the first place. So we talk about that as we talk about the origins, how they set up and stuff like that. But then we do we talk about how the range developed.
Oh, okay.
So what they wanted to do, did they, so for example, going back to Gary and saying, was it always the plan to have new companions?
Got it. To
Yeah.
find out what the intentions really
Yes,
were.
yeah. So did you originally want to have Charlie and Evelyn Smythe and Erin M and Keris and stuff like that, and find out in the book.
Which parts of the range, of the main range, did you find was the most fun for you to research? Were there any particular stories that you were really interested in finding more about?
I love doing the research, and I'm a massive fan of what ifs. So I love to hear, this story was going to feature something, and then it didn't. Like there's one, I think one story that was going to feature the Daleks and it didn't, and there's like ones that was going to have the Master, or originally. Now what was the one of them? That's right. When they did the villains trilogy.
Omega, Zagreus, and the Master.
Yes, and Davros.
Davros,
yeah. Originally, one of those was going to be the Celestial Toymaker.
Oh, okay.
Now, Gary was in charge at the time, and he went to Michael Gough, who played the part on TV, and said, "Do you want to play it again for us on audio?" And he said, "No, I don't." I think he'd retired from acting.
Because he only recently passed away a couple of years ago.
Yes, no, exactly, yeah. So back then, he'd retired, so he didn't want to do any acting at all. So and Gary didn't want to recast, so the Celestial Toymaker didn't happen. Now, fast forward. Now, this isn't in this book, in this volume, but fast forward to a couple of years ago. Nick Briggs is in charge, and David Richardson is the line producer, and they say, "Let's bring back the Celestial Toymaker," but they just recast it, so they weren't too worried about recasting.
Same with the Adric.
Yeah, that's fun. And also, stuff like finding stuff after like what that Adric was originally supposed to be in some of the audios. They approached Matthew way back when, right at the beginning, and said, "Would you like to do it?" And he said he wasn't interested in replaying the role. which is why he hasn't done a companion chronicle or anything. He doesn't want to go back to Adric. He's done a Dark Shadows audio for us, but not Adric.
So how long have you been involved with Big Finish? Maybe that's a better question.
Okay, I met Gary at a fan gathering in 2001, I think. I'd been a journalist before that, and so this is kind of...
a mixture of all the things you like to do.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And Gary, I was trying to convince Gary to give me my first fiction commission, which he did. I got a short trip in an anthology called Solar System. And then from there I started writing audios. I did a Space 1889 for John Ainsworth's company, and then I did a Sapphire and Steel for Big Finish, and then I did a joint Bernie Summerfield with John Dorney, who's a very talented guy, and then we did a Doctor Who, and then I've written the Stargate as well, but that's not out yet. In fact, that was the first one I wrote before the Bernie Summerfield even.
So it's the first one you wrote, but the last one out of the ones
It's going to be last out, yeah, because it takes such a while to clear it through MGM. Then they have to approve the script, then they have to approve the actual audio. So it has to go through 2 approval processes.
And it's probably slower since they're further away. And
Yeah. And also at the time that we were trying to get approval for the scripts, they were going through financial difficulty. So there was like one person employed for the clearance kind of thing, and I'm sure she had a massive...
It was a very slow process because of that.
Yeah.
So where does your interest in Doctor Who, not even just your work for The Big Finish, come from? Where did it
My first memory is a Dalek materialising in a disused railway tunnel in Day of the Daleks. Wow. So that was my first memory, and I've been absolutely terrified of Daleks since. So working for Nick, it's quite terrifying.
Because you're working for the King of the
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm working for the Emperor. It's very scary. No, it's fine. I just loved Doctor Who right from the get-go. John Pertwee was my Doctor, and the short trip I wrote was a Third Doctor story.
So you got a very close connection to the Third Doctor being your first Doctor.
That was my first Doctor, and I'd like to do one for all of them, because as well as this book, I've written a BBC book, which is 2 books in one. It's called Alien Adventures, and I've written a story called The Underwater War, which is in the first one in the book, and the second one in the book is Mike Tucker's Reign of Terror, which was a delayed story, I think, for he was going to do a BBC book a couple of years ago, and he was working on other stuff, and so it's the 2. They do 2 for 1 in one volume.
How different is it working for BBC Books versus, say, an entity like Big Finish, which is a licensee company of the BBC?
Well, it's pretty much the same. I mean, really, they
a lot of the same people that you've met over the years involved in both.
Yeah, well, the BBC book thing is through Penguin. They have own the imprint BBC Books, so it's kind of like sub-licensed to them. It's like Audio Go is used to be BBC Audio. It's now a separate company.
Got it.
So like BBC Books was, I think, bought as an imprint by Penguin. So
it's not even, but they have to go through the same clearances that Big Finish has to do through Cardiff.
Yeah, it has to go through Cardiff, exactly. So, I mean, I had, I think last year I had a comic strip and a book. I had a comic strip for Doctor Who Adventures magazine, and I had the Doctor Who book, and I had a couple of audios going through, because I've got a couple of, I've got a companion chronicle coming up, and I wrote 1/4 of the 150th Big Finish release. So that was sitting on Gary's desk, all this stuff by me waiting to be okayed. So I had a gag with Gary about me sitting on his desk, but we'd probably better not go there.
What out of the spin-off ranges, which maybe I should ask, what among the Big Finish audios, which ones were your favorite to listen to for the researching all the synopses?
Oh, I love the Companion Chronicles. I really do. I mean, I like the main range, and I like everything about Big Finish. I don't know. I couldn't.
You wouldn't have written a book.
Couldn't do the book if I didn't. But I love the Companion Chronicles. I think there's something very intimate about somebody telling you a story. and I love the way that there is a second voice, and there's a dramatic reading with the second voice. And when you have that second voice in those scenes, it really lifts it. So it's like somebody telling you a story, and suddenly the story is happening right next to you.
Much more personal than, say, an audiobook.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because it's still dramatic in how they produce it.
It's still dramatic. It's like somebody telling you a story, as I say, and then, so somebody's saying, and then there was a car crash, and then through the window comes the car. It's like that kind of thing.
Well, then do you think that probably one of the great strengths of an entity like Big Finish is that you don't have to worry about the production values, is that you have the listener's imagination to really...
Well, I mean, it's really easy to forget the sound guy's job on Big Finish, because it's
significant.
It's massive. It really is. And doing an audio is real team effort. The real difference between writing prose, like writing the Doctor Who book, was a real kind of the loneliness of the long distance runner kind of thing, because it's you, and you've got an editor, of course, and you give it to the editor, and she gives you notes. And you do it again, but with the audio, you have that same process of you write it, you get notes, you do a second draft, and then maybe the script editor gives it one last pass. Then it makes it into studio, where the director might make some changes, the actors might make some changes, and they're all trying to make a better
product
final piece. Yeah, exactly. So an actor might go, "Oh, I've got a better line. What about that line instead?" It's a similar line, but it riffs on it.
Because especially for the long-running actors, they know their characters so very well, then they can tweak it to make it...
Exactly, they can make it even better, and you think, yes, thank you very much for making me look better.
And are you involved, like, say, from beginning to end with regards to an audio? Are you involved through the entire process all the way to the end, giving input, even back to the sound guys at the end of the process?
Not that far along. I love to be in studio. For a writer, it's a privilege to be in the studio, because they're not really there to play a part. They're really there just as a kind of perk, because it's very much the director's baby then. The writer kind of steps back, and it becomes the director's responsibility and his job to get the performance out of the actors, and the writer is only really there as a kind of spare pair of ears in case there are any mistakes or something, or you suddenly think of something, or you spot something that was wrong in the script in the first place, or on the occasion where sometimes you write a sentence that sounds fine on the page, but that an actor will trip over for some reason. It's just a tongue twister.
Say if the actors have questions like, what's the intention of what's going on here, they can ask you those sorts of questions.
Well, they could. They would usually direct those to the director, because it's he or she will have understood what you're trying to do in the script, and it's their. They then take your script, and it's their kind of vision of what.
But the greatest perk for you getting to be there is to hear your
That's
words
fantastic.
come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's such a privilege to hear words that you've written brought to life by professionals. It's just a buzz. I will never tire of that.
What a labor of love, like the Big Finish companion, or probably multiple labors of love, because since you have Volume 2 on the horizon, probably far on the horizon, considering the amount of time and work.
No, well, this is the thing: is I realised I had to kind of step up to the plate and go, I don't think I'm going to be able to do the second one, guys. And Nick said, well, who do you suggest steps into your shoes? And there's a fantastic guy who's a professional journalist, and he does a fanzine called The Finished Product, all about Big Finish, called Kenny Smith.
Yeah.
And he's going to write Volume 2. But I said I'd really like to stay attached to the project. I'd like to move upstairs and edit the book, be the editor on it.
Because you've accumulated all this information that could be applicable to the later volume.
Well, exactly, and I know now, having put this thing together, I know how it should work and all the rest of it. So when I get the material, Kenny has already sent in a substantial amount of the material. So we're working on it. I'm editing the second volume. I will start editing the second volume in the new year, and that will be out next year. So,
do you think, in a way, that Big Finish gets enough credit for all of the work of carrying the torch post the '96 TV movie until the show returned, of keeping Doctor Who alive in a way? I know the books did a great deal as well. As
no, I think you're right. I think Big Finish did more than the books, in my opinion, purely because it was the doctors, the actual companions, coming into the studio and making new stories. Now, yeah, you can write a new story about the Seventh Doctor. I don't think that's ever going to be quite as good or quite as powerful as you say, or quite as relevant to the series as a production is going to be, because it is a TV show, it's a TV production with actors bringing something to life, and that's what Big Finish did. And I don't think they do get enough credit, actually. I think that, absolutely, Virgin and BBC Books and Steve Cole and Peter Davison and everyone like that absolutely kept things alive with BBC Books. But I think Gary and Nick and Jason, did a fantastic job of really keeping that flame burning.
With the changes, of course, from Gary Russell and then Nick Briggs taking over as executive producer, do you feel there's in any way a tonal shift? I mean, of course, like the first 10 audios are going to sound vastly different than the most recent 10 audios for the main range, for many vastly different numbers of reasons. But I know that with audios, say, such as a favorite of mine, the Project Twilight, of having some scenes that could be on the edge of horrific, say, for a young listener. Do you feel that there's a great move towards Big Finish being geared towards the older fan, or than the younger fan of the new series, and that's necessarily being a bad or a good thing?
I don't think so. I mean, a tonal shift. I know that certainly production-wise, it's
evolved a great deal.
The process has changed, because obviously when Gary was in charge, there was no Cardiff. Because when there was a Cardiff, that's where Gary went. Gary went to Cardiff to be a script editor on Doctor Who and to OK all the books and the audios and everything like that. So there was no Gary when Gary was at when Gary was at Big Finish. There was no Gary at Cardiff because there was no Cardiff. So he didn't have to worry so much about everything had to be run by the BBC, but they weren't really. There was not
a pipeline as detailed as they have now.
It certainly wasn't scrutinised in as much detail as it is now, and that approval process can take a while. So David is fantastically good at organising the whole system so that plays are the scripts are approved and the plays are recorded a long time before they're released, because they, again, as with MGM, the script has to go to the BBC for approval, and then the final recorded version has to be approved.
All because of the fact that it has that BBC Doctor Who logo on it.
It has Doctor Who on it, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because you can't, you cannot, as you said, some of those things that are done earlier on were, were quite scary and quite push the boundaries, of storytelling with the themes and the settings and the characters. And now there's definitely BBC policy, about not having stories about religion, say.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go into that. I don't think there was.
You couldn't do a Council of Nicaea again, is what you're saying? Maybe that's a little bit more historical.
Yeah. Maybe not a faith stealer.
Oh,
perhaps.
Okay. Got it.
I'm just shooting wildly in the dark, which is probably what will happen to me now.
Well, but I mean, these are all issues that are important during the approval process.
No, absolutely. So there was no approval process. So that's now much more streamlined, and much has to be, because otherwise you'll be people would go, "Where's my release?" And we're going, "Well, it's still with the BBC." So that has to be thought about and planned.
And you
for.
don't want to have to say to subscribers in any of that sort of answer.
Yeah.
Because it just, you don't want to have a bad light on anyone.
Well, no, exactly. It's all, Big Finish, the Doctor Who ranges, they do represent the show. They've got Doctor Who on them. It might be a slightly different logo, but it's still Doctor Who.
So, wow. Well, thank you for sitting down and our extensive talk. And I have a copy of the Big Finish Companion here in my hand, and looking forward to reading all of it over and over and over.
Let me know what you think.
I'm sure. I'm one that I tend to enjoy a lot more of the nonfiction about how the show's put together.
Yeah, well, there's so much trivia. I was really pleased because with I'm going to say one last thing, and then it's the Ben Cook's book. What I was really pleased, obviously, is the first 50 releases, that's what he covered off of the main range in his book, and we obviously cover off the first 75, so there are 25 more than were in that first book. But going back to those first 50, I really wanted to give something new.
Especially that wasn't published in the previous book.
Exactly, so I wanted to find, and I found, in some cases, I managed to dig some trivia out of people that wasn't in that first book. So that I wanted to do something that was different for those first 50 releases, and of course it didn't have the synopses. So,
do you have any anecdotes of what it was like, or did you have any favorite moments of chatting with any of the doctors that stand out to you when you were interviewing them? That just made it such an enjoyable process.
I think for me the best bit is being like the cover. It says it all, because we've got Colin Baker, who does a lovely foreword, and David Warner, who is one of my favourite actors, and it was such a privilege to write for Sapphire and Steel, and Colin Baker, who I've written for Doctor Who, to have him do the afterword, Colin Baker do the foreword, is just like, wow. I never thought I'd sort of see a book with my name next to Colin Baker and David Warner.
People you admire more than anyone in the world.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it must also be kind of heartwarming for fans to hear interviews with people like yourself who get to be involved with Doctor Who, who've had a lifelong love of Doctor Who, and say that maybe one day, it's like, oh, one day I could be in his place doing similar things. And I think it's important that people know exactly what it's like for people that work behind the scenes and make the show that we all love, and it's ever expanding universe.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken me a long time to be an overnight success. Who said that? I can't remember, but it's taken me a long time to get to the position where I'm writing the stuff, doing the BBC books, doing the audios, doing the comic strips. It's taken me ages but also just continuing to do my other writing. Do the journalist stuff, and because I've written for the national press in the UK, and so that's quite cool. That's also quite when you see your name in lights in a national newspaper as the writer, not the subject of the story, but as the writer of the story,
especially in a newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. But that's very cool when you see yourself on page 7 of a national press, and you say, "Look, by Richard Dinnick," you think, yeah, that's cool. But this is awesome. When you see your name attached to Doctor Who.
Now here's one last but probably easy question.
Okay.
Well, I hope so. Have we gotten to the point yet? Are we nearing the point where the amount of output of Big Finish in the Doctor Who universe has surpassed televised Doctor Who in regards to the classic era yet?
I think it has. I think because of it depends whether you class the companion chronicles and the lost stories and stuff like that. But I think, we've done 150 stories. Now, where did we get up to? Well, we got to 200, didn't we, with Planet of the Dead, was it? The 10th Doctor story was number 200. So
it's probably close.
I think it's very close. I mean, certainly it surpasses it if you include the companion chronicles,
Gallifrey,
lost stories,
Dalek Empire, and everything.
Yeah, I mean, not even going off the stuff with the Doctor in it. With the companion chronicles, with the lost stories, with the stage plays. Yeah, we're they've overtaken. Big Finish has overtaken the TV series.
Well, hopefully, Big Finish will continue to go from success to success. And I know that people often complain in the United States, well, we don't have a tradition of audio drama as long living as you do in the UK. But I think I must have been emailing into Big Finish a couple of years ago. It's like, I don't care. I saw it's new Doctor Who with classic Doctors. That's what I wanted to see when there was nothing, after the TV movie. That was great, and hope that it just continues to be successful for your work, for Jason Hay-Gallery, for Nick Briggs, and everyone involved. And thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks very much.
I'm Paddy Kingsland, radiophonic workshop composer for Doctor Who and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I'm Peter Howell, BBC radiophonic workshop composer for Doctor Who.
I'm Roger Lim. I worked at the radiophonic workshop for many years, and I was a composer on many Doctor Who stories.
I'm Mark Ayres.
Hi, this is Dominic Glynn, composer for Doctor Who in the 1980s.
I'm Nick Briggs, the voice of the Daleks.
I'm Simon Guerrier, and I'm a writer.
I'm Robert Shearman.
I'm Toby Hadoke.
My name is Gary Russell, and
you're listening to Adventures in Time, Space and Music on ADDENDUM.
meetsm.philipwserna.com.
Thank you very much, Dr. Phil, for getting that interview for us. And
absolutely.
If you listen to other podcasts, you might have heard it.
You might have heard
earlier.
It is being shared on the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance, which we are proud members of, and was offered up to the group. And so it is. You may have heard it already on another show, and if not, then hopefully you enjoyed it here as well. So
very, very cool.
And I look forward to looking into some of the companion chronicles. I think those would be a lot of fun.
Well, I think so too. I absolutely would love to have this Big Finish companion, the book that he talks about, because it seems to be basically an episode guide for the first, whatever he said, 50 or 75 episodes of Big Finish, and then obviously later there'll be another one coming out. That would be real handy, especially when you're going through and jogging your memory after listening to, especially since we'll be jumping around. So it might be something worth investing in.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
anyway,
because I don't have enough to invest in at this point.
And of course, don't forget to visit Phil's website. And as you heard the
ATSM podcast,
as you heard the trailer there for that as well. So, and moving right along, then that brings us to.
I'm not going to do it. No, that was a trap. There was a little box with a stick propped up underneath it. There was a nice golden prize inside, and I stayed away from it.
But it's now stuck in your head.
Yeah, now it's there, though. You've gone there. So that brings us to our reviews. This is our first endeavor. That we start the new year. Year. We begin the new year with a Big Finish. There we go. Does that work better?
That'll work. I'll accept.
I like that.
This is our first venture on this show into the audio plays put on by Big Finish in the UK, and we're really excited about this, and I think Shaun especially. So now you've listened to more Paul McGann than we have.
Yes.
But you've made no secret that McGann is one of your favorite doctors.
Oh, yeah.
And
if you followed along on Friday Night Who, I think you might have got that impression.
The sad thing of that is that McGann is only in one televised story. However, with Big Finish and the work they've been doing, there is now a plethora of audios with Paul McGann, which is fantastic. So that's what we decided to delve into this week, because Friday Night Who was Doctor Who the movie with Paul McGann. So coming off of that is a couple of his actually first three audio adventures for Big Finish.
Yes.
Starting with Storm Warning.
Storm Warning, October 1930. The Doctor discovers the cause of the R101 tragedy upon losing his TARDIS and meets a new companion, Charlie Pollard. Will the Doctor interfere with established history in his bid to escape fate?
Da-na-na!
That's a not very... unless you know what the R101 is.
Honestly, that was my problem. They went on and on and on about, oh my God, this is the R101 and this is this. And I'm like, is this a real thing?
See,
I had no clue.
I assumed it was a real thing, and I kind of gathered what was going on with it because they talked about it being an airship. I assumed it was like a blimp, Hindenburg type thing.
Yeah, I fortunately, and I can't remember what instance it was, but I was doing research on Hindenburg years and years ago in college, and like I say, I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember what it was for now. Must have been a history class or something. And that's where I had run across the R101. So I knew a little bit about it. It certainly was just an aside to studying about the Lindenberg. I think it was just like comparisons to airship, Zeppelins that were.
Well, and they even make reference to
Hindenburg, not Lindenberg.
Yeah, to the Hindenburg in the episode
exactly.
when they assume the Doctor is German.
Yes.
Or a spy of some sort.
Yes.
And then he takes the jump and says, yes, I'm a German spy. And
so at least I had a little foreknowledge as to what it was. So
the
setup
it didn't take me long to figure out that it was a Zeppelin. But I was uncertain as to whether or not the R101 was an actual event that apparently was.
Yeah.
So bonus points for some history.
Yeah.
Well, and the beginning of
It's a historical piece.
It is. Now I don't like it because it's a historical piece.
Which we were talking about 2 historical pieces. Oh no, I guess it's only 1. Never mind.
No, but the third one sure feels like it, doesn't it?
It does, but we'll get there in a second.
Yeah, we'll get there.
The Vortisaur, which we talked about at the beginning.
Ramses,
which doesn't get his name until later.
No, he's named at the end of this.
He's just a Vortisaur.
He's named at the end of this, wasn't he?
Yeah. That's what I meant later of this episode.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I thought you meant later episodes.
No, later at the end of this one.
Okay.
Is kind of our tie-in through these 3 stories.
Yeah, so far.
Which is nice.
Well, Charlie's there for all 3 of them.
I mean, it's the
Paul
underlying...
McGann's there for all 3 of them.
It's the underlying thread of we've got to get Ramsey home. Yeah. Is kind of the underlying what's going on.
Sort of, yeah.
Well, until the 3rd one when she's like, I don't want to take him home.
Yeah. That's true.
Now, so the Vortisaur in and of itself, and I think I was spoiled a little bit because I have listened to all of the 8th Doctor adventures.
The 8th Doctor series
Which is the series adventures.
By BBC, that aired on BBC.
That aired on BBC. There were 4 seasons with Paul McGann and his companion Lucy Miller. And they encounter a Vortisaur in one of those stories. So the description that's given, I kind of got this weird cross between a pterodactyl and... I don't know if you remember Ralph Bashki's Wizards.
Sure.
But the thing that is on the cover, kind of the big dodo-looking thing of the video box.
Yeah.
Or the thing that the chick rides at the end of Heavy Metal.
Okay, yeah.
That's kind of what I have in my head as a Vortisaur. I don't know if you guys had a completely different image or not. This is one of the fun things with audio is there's no visual picture.
I definitely had a black pterodactyl type impression from it. It's almost like I don't want to say a pterodactyl mixed with a bat, but that's the closest I can think of. Just I don't want to say that because they're almost similar.
I mentioned
they're almost too similar.
I mentioned this earlier, but I really had the visualization of the Reapers from the.
The ironic thing is, I think I listened to this before I watched Father's Day.
Oh, is that right?
So I assumed that those were Reavers, or it was very shortly after. I assumed it was just another name for the Reapers.
Reapers. Reavers are from
Firefly.
You're just trying to get Firefly in there. Yeah, Reapers. Reapers.
Bingo.
What are they called? Reapers? And is that what they were in Father's Day?
In Father's Day.
Yes.
Yeah, Reapers.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's the first thing that popped in my head was, oh, hey, they borrowed this. They borrowed. Well, suppose it would have been the Reapers first. It would have been the Vortisaurs first because this audio came out 2004.
Yeah.
So
I think it did kind of give me.
I got the impression that's where they kind of got that, even though they don't call them. Oh, see that there you go. So they don't call them Vortisaurs in the Father's Day that I can recall.
No, they don't.
He doesn't make like a reference or mention to them.
Which
to me, it's kind of the same thing, except for the Vortisaurs sort of. The impression I get, it's
almost
on
like
time
they're cousins
because they're in the vortex, feeding on events within the vortex. But then, like the Reapers were, there because they're kind of the antibodies of time.
Right.
They're there to fix issues when there's a rip in the
I guess
to me they are kind of
they're like cousins
to each other,
and that's why I kind of had the Reaper look to them. That I think that's where I got the black kind of impression, the black wings but more of a wingspan than the Reapers had.
Now, I don't think I had the size and scope of them until the Doctor said that he used to ride them on Gallifrey.
At the Academy.
Yeah, so it wasn't until then that I realized it had to be much larger, and then of course that plays in later, fortunately as well. Which you totally should have seen that coming, and I didn't.
It wasn't until about 5 minutes beforehand, and when Charlie started to freak out about how we're going to get out of here, I went, oh, wait a minute! I remember!
So. I know how!
Let's talk about Charlie for a minute. What do you guys think of Charlie?
I love Charlie.
Charlie, I really enjoy Charlie.
India Fisher, she does a fantastic job voicing Charlie. She's being Charlie.
And it wasn't until a couple more episodes that I really started enjoying her more. I think she has a good role for this as the setup for the companion to come.
I think so, too.
And that's what... And it completely portrays that in her performance. I know she's not Lucy Miller for you.
Well, no.
I
started off or the Asian child. I started off very, very strong with Charlie. I liked the concept of somebody who was just itching to get out there. And I mean, we've seen this type of character before, obviously, the Amelia Earhart, almost, if you will.
Yeah.
But as the series has gone on, these 3 episodes, I find Charlie has started to wear a little thin on me.
Really?
Yeah, and I haven't made...
Just by these 3?
Just by these 3.
Really?
I haven't really been able to determine...
And you haven't got to, in my opinion, the worst of the first several Paul McGann's.
Well,
8th Doctor Audio Adventures.
No, I have, because these are the only, of the main line, these are the only 3 I've listened to with him.
The very next one, after those last 3, horrible. Absolutely horrible. But we'll get into that later.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
We'll get to that. But no, it just, it's almost, she's almost become Tegan, in a way.
Really?
She's whiny, I thought you were going to take me somewhere nice. By the 3rd one, she's kind of come across as very meh. And I don't know. I'm making an unfair judgment 3 in to her status as a full-blown companion. I just haven't quite made up my mind yet. So
okay.
Well, let's talk about the main plot of The Storm Warning. I found it really enjoyable trying to figure out what was going to happen that would cause this airship to wreck. And then part of me was slightly disappointed that it was maybe not so much that it was going up to rendezvous with an alien ship. Because I almost expect that. It's Doctor Who. There's going to be aliens involved typically.
Yeah.
But then
in a period piece, it was a little disjointed almost.
it did feel a little disjointed, but how many aliens have we seen in period pieces?
Yeah, several.
I can think pretty much all of them.
I was going to say, almost all of them have something to do with aliens.
But when we get to the ship, there's a definite tonal change. And I think the idea of these aliens that they're dealing with is a nice idea, just not fully realized enough.
I
think it would have served a better purpose on their almost home planet, discovering what the 3 different types of but classes of aliens these are.
Maybe I missed a point here. I got the impression that we weren't necessarily on the ship once we meet the ship.
We were.
That we've got this mothership thing going on. But this is like their civilization is all encompassed here as well.
Get that impression.
That not like they were traveling from their own place, that this is where they live. No?
You watched
it was almost...
You guys listened to it more recent than I have.
It was almost this other world... I don't want to say otherworldly. It's like transdimensionality type thing where once we get to the ship, we're sort of where they're at. Not like we were transported clear across
the galaxy,
like a Stargate.
I got the impression,
but I got the impression it was more of a transcendental thing where once you enter the ship, you've become kind of in the realm of where they're from. Because I get the impression they're all there. There's not another. This isn't like a small scout ship of them. This is the entire collective here, right? And didn't you get that from it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely feel like there was. I agree with you. I don't think we were transported across galaxy,
right.
but there was definitely the sense of complete immersion in society. But I didn't get the impression that was the end all be all of their society. It was just that they had loaded all the big honchos in the ship, and that this was it.
And that the traveling was because that's just the best way to fit more crew into the ship.
I guess
specifically, it was from the comment, and obviously it could be flawed, but from the comment that I can't remember the character's name, but the admiral or whatever he was that was in charge of the expedition,
Lord Tamworth.
Lord Tamworth. That he had made a comment about imagine coming home with a ship like this.
Yes. No,
that just kind of gave me the impression that there is a fleet of them out there somewhere. But maybe not.
And it made me seem, because the Doctor had heard of this species before and encountered them before, it made it sound like.
I don't remember him. I think this was new to him.
I think this was new to him.
No, this was
too.
entirely new to him. I don't recall
think he... no, it wasn't that he had encountered,
he
but
had
he had heard of them.
Yeah.
And that makes it seem like it's not just they're roaming.
Okay, I didn't remember that. But
I think he'd heard of them in the way a lot of aliens have heard of Time Lords.
But I guess my thought is, I mean, if they're basically transcendentally roaming across the galaxy, they've come across other places as well. So my biggest theory for the fact that they aren't necessarily, that they are kind of transcendental and that they are this is their society is, I can't see you putting the judge, the brain, what they consider him, what was the
lawgiver.
The lawgiver, there you go. I can't imagine them putting the lawgiver.
Lawgivers from Planet of the Apes. I'm not sure that's right.
The main guy, the conscience, the guy that, I can't imagine them putting him on this one ship ahead of everything else.
Well, just other than the fact that he was about to die.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
Because they needed to scout out to find a new lawgiver or lawmaker.
Well, that's what they
probably
were
required
doing,
him to go.
I don't know. That just
because only he could choose it because he's the only one.
There's something that comes across in it that we're talking semantics here. That's irrelevant to the success of the story. I personally love this. Was my favorite of the three. This is the least of the three. This is the least Doctor Who-ish to me. I mean, when you take classic Who, I guess when I take the Big Finish audios, I kind of put them in the perspective of the stylization of the classic series. I think they're all done. For the most part, the majority of them are done in that same style as the classic series, based on whether it's all encompassing the story, the format, like the 4-episode format of most of them, the opening in one way and closing in one way, and the cliffhanger idea of that. So they all feel very classic Who. This one feels to me the least classic Who, just because of the sheer scope of this story. I think this is something you could have imagined for television but never pulled it off, and so it works fantastically as an audio story. Now the problem that I have with this one is there's not a whole lot of action going on here until the end, until Rathborn, is that his name, Rathborn, comes to the ship and we have this big kind of fight happening at that point. And then it's not even a fight because they figure out that if they're just aggressive with them, they've got so much regressed fear so much regressed fear in them that they automatically scatter. So there's not a lot of excitement and action until then. There's a lot of mystery that plays up, but I think that's kind of typical of the three stories that we're reviewing tonight anyway. But this one feels the least Doctor Who. But the scope of the story was so cool for me that I think I enjoyed this one the most.
See, I think I enjoyed the mystery going on before we even got to the action more than the action itself.
I don't necessarily mind that there wasn't action because the first chapter is all set up, the first segment, but it's very, very good setup. The second and third segments of the story, where we really get into the meat of this idea, this is a fantastic concept. This is hardcore science fiction at its best. This is something that would have been turned into an original series Star Trek episode had it been around back then. I mean, this is one of those things that they would have looked for.
Well, this is very Next Gen too.
Yeah,
now, Next Gen still had a little bit of more the
well, but the Next Gen would have involved a B plot with Counselor Troy liking chocolate.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
It's a very hardcore story. The problem with it, in my mind, is that it is a very hardcore story. It's very hard to pull this concept off in an audio format because we've got these aliens and there's 3 different pieces to the race, and this is the lawgiver and these are the enforcers and these are the scientists, and
it all seemed a little rushed to me.
See, I thought I totally agree. I thought they laid it out very well.
It was well laid out.
I think I totally disagree with you in the sense that this is the best format for this type of story because this story was told so well that the only limits that I had as far as visualizing this thing was my imagination, and that's what I liked about it. My imagination ran just wild with this, and I loved that.
I think honestly, it would have been better served as a novel. That's where I think because I don't think you can do it on TV. I agree with you couldn't do it on TV, but I don't think an audio necessarily works for it either. Just from the standpoint that there's so much going on.
The problem with an audio, though, is I think that this concept works in a small envelope of time, which did well. I think in a novel, you would maybe a novella, because I think in a novel you'd feel compelled to drag it out a little more to kind of space it out so that it was longer. And I don't think this story needed to be longer or more in depth. I think the time is fine. I didn't feel rushed at all, Keith.
I think a novel would work because it would expound on the descriptions.
See, I don't need any more of the description then it suffers from being too wordy. I mean,
I personally didn't get a good enough description to visualize the aliens.
Yeah.
Maybe if you'd done it in novel format, it would have turned out something like the Asimov's Foundation trilogy, where it's all explaining the mathematics, and it wouldn't work.
That's where
so
Foundation.
right.
That's where Foundation falls down, is the fact that it just gets too wordy and too brainy.
I don't know. And then you get to the fourth segment, and obviously, again, there's this. Oh wow, humanity sucks because what did we do? We brought the guns.
You do realize that pretty much every science fiction story out there that has to do with the human basis is about humanity is a statement on how bad humanity is.
I know.
You continue to be disappointed, but you must be disappointed a lot, as much science fiction as you watch. If you're rooting for the humans, it's just rooting for them to survive.
Well, obviously, the minute you deal with a historical story, okay, we're in our historical context, and we've met an alien spacecraft, there's two ways that this can go. You're either going to rewrite history, or it's going to get away and nothing's going to... They're not bringing the ship home. Yeah. I knew that going into it.
Oh, I absolutely knew going into it that once they established, oh no, this is going to crash, I can't be on here.
Yeah.
The ship wasn't going to survive.
And once Rathburn was really established as the quote-unquote villain of the piece, that he was the power-hungry, whatever you want to call him.
No, he is.
Then all of a sudden it became there's no doubt in my mind what's in the mystery containers that are sealed off from the rest of the ship now. I mean, that part became very, very transparent.
And
it was still enjoyable.
I sympathize with your struggle with the fact that, oh, here we go, humanity is just crap again. I sympathize with you when you're watching a story about the present or the future, because I want to hope that someday we are beyond that. But when you set something up in 1938, and you set it up with aliens, I know exactly what's going to happen because you know what society was like back then. So you know what sort of ideals and preconceived notions were,
how close-minded
things
were,
how close-minded they might have been. Yeah. So,
I think
coming
into
this one, I wouldn't
Charlie
be disappointed in that sense.
With she's a girl, she's not supposed to be on board.
She had to sneak on as a boy.
Yeah.
When this thing starts, she's disguised as a boy, as a young boy,
and that's very indicative of the times. And then to further it with the men are all going to be in the smoking lounge having cognac and cigars. It almost felt like Titanic at points. So
no, this is for being. If I remember right, this is McGann's first outing after the movie as the Doctor,
which I loved McGann in this story.
He hits the ground running.
He does.
He absolutely does.
He completely embodies. I mean, it would have been 5 years if this was 2001. It would have been 5 years since he had stepped into the role of the Doctor, and this was fantastic. I think he picked it up and just right where he left it off as far as the character. Now, we should say that we realize that there are more stories in between Storm Warning now and the movie. We do realize that there are more stories that they've gone back and retroactively fit into those. But in linear timeline, this would have been his very first thing. Right,
and
it
feels like it could be. It feels like it
does.
very easily could be. He's left Earth, and now he's off and running.
I think before we move on, something we'll have to mention, and you didn't realize this until I brought it up the other night, was the running theme. You knew that there was a running theme of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein because you had heard references of it before, and the reference was in here. But I pointed out that the very first reference of Frankenstein is actually in the movie. Now, you knew that the reference was in there, but I don't think you correlated the two.
I didn't put the two together. That all throughout Paul McGann's Eighth Doctor run, the idea of Frankenstein and rebirth and life after death, I mean, it's kind of a continuing thread for his Doctor.
Yeah.
Almost a defining characteristic in the same way that many people would consider the Time War is a defining characteristic for Christopher Eccleston's Doctor.
Agree.
I mean, it's definitely there.
And so I think it's right that he's searching through the library for the TARDIS manual, and he comes across the copy of Frankenstein, and he essentially, in his own mind, talks to Shelley, Mary Shelley about, he makes the comment or wherever he says, but giving you the impression that he has been at one point in time with Mary Shelley at the time that they were writing,
and
that
almost
she
gave
was
him
writing Frankenstein, and
the inspiration.
Sort of gave it the And now, as I understand, there is a story later on down the line of Big Finish Line that takes place before Storm of Warning now that will answer some of the questions of
they totally use that as a great jump.
And kudos to them for keeping that in their mind and going back to it and saying, hey, this would be fun to play with. So.
One thing that I didn't like about this is the loss of the TARDIS.
I kind of rolled my eyes at that. I'm like, really, again?
It's not so much that really, again, it's that they have marginalized the loss of the ship. It's done in such a... And the new series has done a great deal of this, where it's done... And in the old days, this was unheard of. I mean, the Doctor kind of parks the ship and then walks away, but he knows that it's there waiting for him. He can always go back to the ship. And we've gotten several instances of late, both in the new series and in these audios, where the TARDIS has become inaccessible for whatever reason because, well, if he had access to it, he could solve the problem very easily.
Right, exactly.
But one of the things that, and this is something I didn't like, honestly, about Voyage of the Damned, we get that fantastic shot of the TARDIS tumbling out into space after the asteroid impact, and it's gone. It's floating away and burns up on re-entry, and in my mind, the ship's forever, it's gone. And then there's a really quick line of dialogue at the end when he walks up to the ship. Oh, it's soft-landed. Here it is. And the Doctor kind of made almost the same reference here. He knows the ship just got flushed with the ballast off the Zeppelin, and he's worried about triangulating the position so he can catch up with it later. And I'm thinking... We know it's relatively indestructible, but still, I mean, you just dropped it out of... You just bombed Europe with the TARDIS.
France in particular.
Yeah. Shouldn't there have been a... I don't know. That worries me that it can be quite literally discarded so callously, and I'm not too worried about it because I'll catch up to it later.
Yeah.
You know, it just feels wrong
I suppose,
to take that view.
I suppose the Doctor is a little too... I guess what I look at is I put it into perspective. Had I listened to this when it first came out, it would have been prior to the new series.
Yeah.
In which the new series has kind of just thrown off, we've lost the TARDIS again. Well, conveniently that gets rid of it.
She's sunk into a pit of acid, or she's done this.
I mean, and that's where to the center of the planet.
That's where I've come from, is the fact that I've seen new series.
we have too as well. But
he started with them.
Well, that's true. But the thing that I have with this is, back then I'd have been gone, what? Why are you so, not so worried about this? You just lost it. And even listening to it this time, I thought, ooh, that kind of stinks. Man, that thing just plummeted to Earth. It's gone.
Every time it happens, there's this wave of, and then he blows it off, and it's like,
the TARDIS.
Oh, we're going to do that again.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I guess I just more think of, that's going to suck to try to get back to.
Yeah, it's like, that's what I always think is like, he's got like GPS on it, so he's I lose my cell phone. I'm going to find it later.
That's going to be one heck of a trek later.
Exactly. But
I just if the ballast room had filled up with water and the TARDIS was inaccessible because it had drowned, that almost would have been more okay. It's there, but he can't get to it, as opposed to. I mean, it just fell out of the airplane. It's gone. It's tumbling through and it hit the trees, and I've lost it. I mean, where do you go with that? So I don't know. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's just me.
I mean, clearly the writer is just getting rid of it so that it doesn't become
so he can't just run off with Charlie.
It doesn't become a crutch. And notice no use of Sonic in this one. No
Sonic in this one, which was left in the TARDIS, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
This was my very first Big Finish I've ever listened to.
This
Storm
Warning was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think some of my issues with it were the fact that I had never heard Doctor Who audio plays before, so I didn't know how they set up, how much description they gave.
Now refresh my memory. Had you come to this before we started this little venture?
No.
This
was after.
It was after.
You let me borrow your CDs, and I listened to them all.
In the early days.
Okay.
It was after we had watched the movie.
So episode 7.
Sometime after we watched the movie.
Yeah.
And I listened to this one, and I enjoyed it.
I just know that you had some real basic Who experience before, but you didn't really know what you were watching. So I don't know if this fell into that.
That was just Eccleston and a little bit of Tennant.
Okay.
Nothing of this caliber. And so this was my first real introduction. And really, as far as audio plays and audio dramas, I think the only one I'd ever listened to was the audio plays and audio dramas of Star Wars. They did. So I already had a visual reference to what everything looks like, how everything goes, what's actually happening. So I think part of my issues of why I didn't like this as much as I was getting used to the format.
Yeah. I really enjoy it. I find it honestly very difficult now to fathom a plain old audiobook in some ways. I've listened to audiobooks on tape and I enjoy them immensely, but Big Finish has really gone so above and beyond with fitting you into this world with the music and the sound effects and the just everything that goes into it. It's like Doctor Who. It's the only thing missing is the pictures, and they do such a good job with filling in the blanks with the character saying, "Oh, you're just saying that because of this," and kind of filling in some of that what would normally be
he looks like
visual monologue.
Right.
There was a lot of he looks like a
yeah. And it's simple throwaway lines, but you just they just fill it in, and your imagination kind of runs with it and goes, yeah, okay. I mean, it reminds me a lot of listening to Orson Welles in the Mercury Theater. Yeah.
That's especially what it reminds me of, is that kind of audio, like old-time radio,
Yeah.
so, in a way. A little more high-tech, because you could...
Shadow knows.
Shall we move on to Sword of Orion?
Let's do, because I thought this would be your favorite, since
this is
Cybermen.
Very high up there. The 8th Doctor and Charlie encounter the Cybermen on a crippled vessel, light years away from a war in the Orion system, which rages between humans and androids. Are the two connected? Da-da-da. This one also features Mark Gatiss.
Gatiss.
Did that say that on there?
Finis. He played the role of Finis.
Okay, so this was pretty much taken then from the visuals story. Let's see who he played on that particular one.
I want to say I originally listened to this one before my love of Cybermen.
Okay.
So some of my opinions on it aren't elevated because it's Cybermen.
That explains so much.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you made the comment the other day, it was all right. I was like, what?
I was getting this confused. It wasn't. Yeah, I'm sorry. It was Mark Gatiss was actually in this episode.
Actually in this one.
The audiovisual, which I thought was interesting, was Gary Russell actually played a character, and Nicholas Briggs played the Doctor in the Adventures in Time and Space audiovisual adventures. So.
Oh, okay. I follow you now.
Huh. Sorry about that. I was getting confused earlier when we were talking about. Yeah, Mark Gatiss is actually in this.
Looking at some of the details on this, knowing that Nicholas Briggs wrote this, is so much cooler. Looking back in retrospect, with the knowledge I have now compared to when I initially listened to it, and going back and refreshing myself with some of the plot elements of this, I like this so much more. I want to go back and re-listen to it now with my love of Cybermen, and now with more of my knowledge of Doctor Who in general. Mm-hmm. I would enjoy this a whole lot more than I did the initial time.
Yeah.
I agree very much with... great. Was it Chrissy that said that she thinks Cybermen are best realized in audio? Or very well realized in audio?
I think it might have been,
That's right.
I agree. 100%.
Sorry if we're crediting the wrong person,
yeah,
but I think you're right.
I made a note to make a note, and I didn't make the notes. Now I've lost it. My memory. And I'm talking about things that I listened to 2 weeks ago, and I'm trying to remember something that we just talked about 40 minutes ago, so that kind of lets you in my brain. I think the Cybermen, and again, coming from some of the background that I've heard, I don't want to spoil anything, but during that 4-year run, the Cybermen show up. I love the audio Cybermen stories. I love them. They're so good. This one, a little off, just from the standpoint that the Cybermen once again have kind of been relegated back to not quite true villain status, because they are crippled and they're not, we're dealing with one salvage ship and one Star Destroyer full of Cybermen, which they kept calling it a Star Destroyer, and man, that put some audio or some video visuals in my head of a completely different concept, I'm sure.
And a completely different
But, they're not enforced. They're not the Cybermen that we all know and fear. It's a small group of Cybermen that are kind of run into trouble. And that kind of detracts from them just a little bit. But for purposes of this story, it still works, and it was still... This is my favorite of the three.
Before my love of the Cybermen, listening to this story almost made me fear the Cybermen more because they were almost more desperate. If you could give emotion to what the Cybermen are going through, we're more desperate to continue their existence and create more in order to revive and become the warriors they need to be.
Okay.
I get that impression much more in this than I did in Closing Time. And you know how much I love Closing Time.
Yeah.
So that's before, that's how I kind of viewed it.
This story for me likens more to Tomb of the Cybermen, because you have these Cybermen...
Which is even name dropped.
Right, exactly. It really is, because he talks about it in their Tomb on Tellus. But it has that same fear of, we've been lured here by some means, and we go in and we open up and reactivate Cybermen that have been sitting dormant for, who knows how long. And it's very similar to Tomb of the Cybermen in that sense. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the story happens outside of...
there's a lot of ominous Cybermen coming.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not a lot of Cybermen in it.
That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting at. There's a lot of it happening outside of what's going on with the Cybermen in here, and you have the Cybermen continually. They're coming. We have to keep them at bay. We have to keep, which again parallels a lot of Tomb of the Cybermen up to a point.
Yeah. And
until you're actually thrown in, thrust into the realm where the Cybermen are, and then that's becomes central to the plot point as well. But it really reminded me a lot of Tomb of the Cybermen and that style of Cybermen stories. So I think maybe looking at it from that way, I didn't necessarily feel so let down with the Cybermen that they weren't this, because that was kind of where I felt they were going with it, was pre Baker era Cybermen, or even pre Invasion and late Patrick Troughton Cybermen. So I enjoyed this one. This was my second favorite but I mean, the next one coming up is just makes any of them look like the Bible or something. Anyway, I think Charlie's character in this one is my least favorite Charlie story, because I feel that she sort of gets left, like her character isn't realized like it should be. Because
her character arc is not forwarded at all.
She becomes second fiddle here too. She almost becomes that companion that the Doctor relies on to explain what's going on and further the plot.
I had a lot of that also,
and
listening to it, I kind of chalked it up to she came from this. This is her very next adventure. Is so forward in the future with Cybermen. She's not going to know how to react or deal with any of this. She's going to just kind of pull back and withdrawal in order for self-preservation.
Yeah.
So the Doctor's trying to explain what's going on with her, with everything. So that's how I viewed it in this story.
And I think setting this story up at this place looking for information on how to get Ramsey well, right? This was this one. Yeah. The Ramsey's looking.
They're at the bazaar looking for...
I sort of like that, because it's almost like we had some time in between where Charlie was kind of acclimated to this, being pulled out of her time, being pulled into fantastical situations where, if it were like from Rose to... what was the next one? Into the World. Where there's this huge leap, and she has to just absorb all this and deal this in, and it's instantaneous. We go from one to the other. Whereas here, they give you a little bit of leeway that maybe there's been some off story where she's been kind of acclimated a little bit. Not a lot going on here. But just enough that you kind of accept that she's not as...
maybe not a whole other adventure, but she's definitely spent some time in the TARDIS traveling.
She's wandered around the TARDIS, realizing how big it really is.
There you go. She's getting used. So it's not so much of a surprise when the Cybermen do show up and futuristic and things, and it's not until the next one that she makes the comment that I absolutely love. But I'll get there when we get there. But they did a nice job of feeling like Charlie was acclimated without just throwing her in and you thinking, well, this is unrealistic, because she would be flipping out about these Cybermen more so than she is. So I thought they did a nice job about that. But she's just kind of second fiddle to all the rest of the characters in this, and she's just there to explain the plot. So I felt a little let down by that. But the captain, the idea that she's, the motive for her going after this ship, activating these Cybermen, what the mystery that they build behind that, which doesn't end up turning out to be much of a mystery. And quite frankly, there's not a lot of action going on in this. Again, this is another one that is a lot of mystery.
It's a lot of build-up.
Yeah, a lot of build-up, and then we finally do get the
I felt very much
climax.
Suckered in by the red herring. That we know the captain's a little off by. Yeah. She's too driven to get to this ship. There's something else at work here. And when the Doctor breaks into the encrypted computer records by tricking the computer into thinking he's important, and gets access that she's got some military background, she's got this, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, there it is. We kind of knew that going into it. Right. This wasn't a surprise at all.
Well, he keeps chiding her for knowing so much about cybernetics.
Yeah, but then they talk about the fact that she's got this advanced weapon and that she can blow Cybermen away with one shot, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, this is not a surprise to me when they gave this big reveal of, well, you're in with the military. Yes, I am. Ha ha. Yeah, and I felt a little cheated.
Yeah,
but then that was immediately suckered away by the jaw-dropping, whoa, back up, she's an android at the end of the thing. Didn't see that coming.
Well, let's
at all.
talk about her sacrifice at the end. That was fantastic, I thought.
I think so, too. And, of course, this goes into... Now, this is where I can't believe I brought up the, oh, great, humanity stinks again. Because this is all built around the racial struggle between humans and the cyborg... Or not cyborgs, androids. I mean, the humans created this android race and then basically wouldn't let them... I mean, you're going to be second-class citizens. And so there's this whole thing going on here. And so... playing with that whole idea that she's, sacrifices herself for, them at the end, it really...
This is another one of those, and maybe it's... There's a part of me that wanted so much more of this backstory that they kind of threw at us, and I think it was the third episode. We get the Orion War and the setup, and
there is.
Oh, is there?
There's. I just discovered this on Wikipedia. There's, I don't know how many parts it is, but Nicholas Briggs started and continued a Cybermen Big Finish Productions audio play, and I'm clicking through right now. There are 8 parts to this story that deal with, like the very first one. The description sounds like humans are at war with their own creations. Are Cybermen the only chance for peace?
This is kind of a prequel for this sub-story.
It continues plot threads that appeared in Sword of Orion.
Really?
So it's this wibbly wobbly timey wimey. Sword of Orion is referencing what's happening in this mini-series of Big Finish audio.
So it sounds like what...
Granted, it's probably backwards.
Right. Nicholas Briggs did is he wrote Sword of Orion and then decided we should expound on this backstory and make it its own. So he goes and he writes this large backstory that becomes a mini-series of what... the small events of Sword of Orion are
well, cool. I look forward to those.
The Orion War.
Yeah, there we go. There was a part of me that wanted so much more of the Orion War explained in what was going on in this. There was another part of me that kind of felt like, you know what? This is an old story. Anytime in science fiction humanity creates a machine, we screw it over, and then we're surprised when it turns on us. And, so... we suck. I'm well aware of that. But just, you look at The Matrix, you look at anything where the machines have come and kicked our butts later. It's like, well, we had that coming. So, but I love the fact that she sacrificed. And another one that, at least to our knowledge, everybody but the Doctor and Charlotte dies in this. This is another one of those where we get to 10 Little Indians mode and then ain't nobody making it out of this one.
You guys, that's not 10 Little Indians mode. Okay, we're not going to go there.
I wasn't agreeing with the 10 Little Indians mode. I was just agreeing a lot of people died.
A lot of people died.
A lot of people
die in the first one, too.
That's true.
Yeah, because that's
everybody on that ship. With the exception
that was predestined.
That was predestined.
Lord Tamsin makes it out.
Tamsin makes it up because he goes on to be the lawmaker or whatever he is. We decided he was.
And
which apparently, looking at the wiki, they got some of their facts wrong.
Yes, apparently 6 people actually survived that crash. Oh, really? So this particular,
however many they said.
Right. Well, this particular episode, did
the Doctor reference that?
Well, there was supposed to be a certain number of people that die in the ship, and the 2 survive because the Doctor takes Charlie, and the Lord Tamsin goes with the species. The aliens,
right? But they're not known to have survived. That's my point. Is as far as the story was concerned, everybody died on that ship as far as England knew or Earth knew, whereas there actually were 6 survivors of that airship.
That was something that did surprise me. The Paul McGann stories in general, there's a lot of talk about the web of time. There's a lot of talk about you cannot change history. He's very William Hartnell with this. You do not change anything. And yet, so much of the Doctor in general has been about, I can rescue this person who is presumed to have died and set them up on a new identity and a new path and kind of let them go their own way and tell them
the Eighth Doctor?
Just in general, the Doctor has done that before. Where
we're
how many
in
people
some
he's
event,
pulled out of his time stream?
Yeah.
I
mean, we're at some event. Everybody's going to die, but I've managed to save you. I'll drop you off and tell you just kind of stay out of history's way, you know. And so it just kind of surprised me that he had such a revelation at the end of Storm Warning.
We totally glossed it over. We should talk about that. He
just completely freaks out about the fact that, oh my God, I've saved Charlie and I wasn't supposed to. She was supposed to have died, and he's
but in the same
he's going to
beat,
take her back, you know.
But in the same beat at the end, changing his mind based on what caused him to change his mind? I can't remember. It had something to do with was it the Vortex? Yeah, the Vortex.
Because Ramsey was reacting badly to her.
Was reacting badly to her earlier, but then he was fine with her at the end, and that's what changed his mind back. That makes sense.
Having watched further and re-looking at this on Wiki,
I'm supposed to do this research before we come.
I know, but I'm still. I didn't realize Ramsey had his own Wiki section. He's considered a companion.
Ramsey, well, he has traveled in the TARDIS.
But. And I never got this far, but I remember the fact that Ramsey started reacting badly to him because of taking her out of her natural time stream.
Right.
And apparently Charlie's paradoxical existence is resolved in a later story.
Yeah.
Well, don't read too far ahead.
I don't know what story it is. I don't know
Neverland.
What happens.
It's called Neverland.
Yeah, it's Neverland.
Because I did my research before I came. I just didn't
stop reading
feel it was
so far
necessary
ahead
to
and just drop it. We don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to know that she's got a paradoxical existence. I just want to know that he pulled her out of time.
They make hints at it so much
in
that one,
and
that
one,
this
and
one.
then I think no, it's not. Did they mention it in Storm of Orion? I know that it's mentioned again in Stones of Venice.
Yeah, I mean this is the main theme going on, so.
We'll get to it.
It's assumed that it's going to be resolved at some point.
Just trust me, we'll get to it.
You're jumping ahead. You're finally getting to enjoy something alongside us now. Don't ruin it, okay?
I'm a couple months ahead of you guys.
We're all discovering this together.
Yes.
So
it's been a couple months since I've listened to this.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised you're being able to go on memory as well as you are too. I'm pretty impressed.
I have done my research in order to talk about this.
Anything else on Sword of Orion that we want to jump out at, or
I don't think so at all.
I thought it was a very, very well done story.
It was fun.
Oh, and props to Nicholas Briggs. I believe it was Nicholas Briggs who's the voice of the Cybermen in all these things.
That's right.
Because when I listened to this, totally thought it was David Banks who played the Cyber Leader in virtually all of the 80s and 90s.
Nicholas Briggs and Alistair Locke.
Yeah, so one of them did an absolutely fantastic job of obviously once you hook the voice, I mean, I suppose there's somebody that could argue, well, a Dalek sounds like a Dalek and a Cyberman sounds like a Cyberman. But
there are slight differences.
There are slight differences, and I totally thought they had got David Banks out of the storage facility that he's obviously cryogenically frozen in, and brought him back to perform the Cyberman, and it wasn't. It was something completely something different. So, which wow, blew my mind.
Yeah.
So.
All right, well, let's get to this next piece of junk.
The Stones of Venice. The 8th Doctor and Charlie decide to have a little peace and quiet in Renaissance Venice. Except he gets the date wrong by about 600 years and discovers a cursed city about to sink below the water, complete with a duke who hasn't aged for 100 years, amphibian gondoliers, and a curator obsessed with his art collection. And your typical mad cult leader, Charlie, isn't impressed.
Neither was I.
I don't know what it was about this one. Maybe it was the fact that
you lead us off because Glenn and I are going to tear this thing to pieces.
Yeah. I think my fondness for this is out of these three and a couple other later, this is one of the ones that I listened to more back to back. It wasn't split up as much for me. I think the time I was reading this, I had to spend a couple days as a photographer at work. And so I listened to this in the station vehicle. And so I was able to get 3/4 of this episode listened to in the course of half a day.
Yeah.
So I think listening to it all together made me enjoy it a bit more than the previous ones, which I had to break up in 10, 15-minute increments. I think that's a large portion of why I enjoyed this story.
It certainly helps, I suppose, but
I
think nothing can help this story. But
I liked. There's a lot. I admit there's a lot of disjointedness in this story.
Oh boy!
But there's a lot of elements I really took to and really liked.
It's not even disjointedness. It's just, I want to say randomness is sometimes
it's random, disjointed, non-cohesive. We're in Venice of the future, which is falling apart. We have
which
frogmen.
is so cool,
and it feels like Venice of the past.
It totally feels like Venice of the past. We have a guy. The one guy gets run through with a sword.
Yeah,
really.
We
don't have ray guns at this point. We have a duke. We have a masked ball.
But I thought of Venice as the future as a tourist spot to get a taste of the past.
And I could buy that if they had maybe dropped a line.
They have to reference.
They have to reference it.
Maybe
I'd like to get inside your head someday because no, really,
it's a scary place. Don't go.
I just randomly retcon things that don't.
No, I would enjoy things more if I were in your head. The reason being is because you are very ready to presume things just based on presumption. I can't do that if it is not referenced in the story in some way. It does not exist, and I can't make amends for things that a writer left out, that a director left out, that anybody on that production crew left out of that story. If you leave it out for me to come up with my own conclusion not conclusion, because I don't mind coming up with my own conclusion to a story or to
your own presumption.
Something that's been set forth. No. It's the presumptions that I don't want. Yeah. I don't want to go into something presuming anything. I shouldn't have to. A story is not a good story if I come into it with questions and doubts about things that are going on in the story.
It's like the impact suit. We needed to have the words impact suit
spoken.
Suit absolutely.
Works. That's why that works.
I agree with you. And I think being exposed to more Who now, if I were to go back and re-listen to this, because it has been quite a while since I've listened to it, I would have more issues with it. I think I just also liked quite a few of the characters in it.
Yeah. See, I don't even think the characters are that good. The problem is we came off of Storm Warning. Well, the problem is
I think the problem is I didn't listen to this as back to back.
There you go.
Two Storm Warnings as you
That's
guys.
The thing. We just came off of Storm Warning and we just came off of Sword of Orion, which had some very, very good characters. It was the characters are well written, they're well performed, they're well rounded, they are very, very well, they're well portrayed. They're all great, enjoyable characters in their own rights. And then we come into this one, and there's nobody here you like. There's nobody
Venice is
here
populated with
idiots.
Stereotyped caricatures.
Venice, you know what?
Exaggerated.
Yes, exactly. You know what this reminded me of? It reminds me of that scene in Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame. That it's just these fools like every day in Venice in the future is the day of fools in Notre Dame. Every day is like that to me in this
it's
future.
Mardi Gras.
Yeah, it's Mardi Gras every day.
I guess
that drove me nuts.
Maybe,
and all of these people were exactly caricatures of characters, and that drove me insane.
Maybe it was my presumption, and because my memory won't be as fresh as you guys, but I got the impression that the city knew it was sinking.
Yes,
it did,
and that it was coming very soon.
No, that's not a presumption.
That's why they were
clear.
That's why they were acting the way they were.
But,
yes,
but how long do you need? Okay. We presume the world's going to end in 2012. Does that mean I break out my party hat today?
Today, exactly.
No.
That's exactly
what?
The
We showed up
impression that
2
I
days beforehand?
We did, but they give the impression that this thing has been going. Debauchery's been going on for.
Well, it sounds almost like 100 years
yes,
if you listen to the people that complain
because
about the Duke.
It's from the point where Lady What's Her Name is gone, up until this point where it's finally sinking. It's like we saw this coming, but we decided not to do anything for 100 years. We wasted our life for 100. That's the problem I have.
Well,
with
this
We've
is
got
another thing,
such
and I can tell this is an area where Glenn has huge issues with this.
We aren't even close to what I have.
The woman dies, supposedly.
Okay, you are going to touch on it.
We get to this, he's cursed. He's going to live for 100 years without aging. And we never get to the scientific explanation of how that works.
I did have a problem with that,
the
too.
Worst part of the scientific explanation is she had the jewels.
But what are the jewels?
The psychic,
no, exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
There's no
explanation.
There is no
for
explanation there. The jewel, just saying she had jewels and that's what kept her alive, does not work.
Especially 600 years in the future.
If you told me that these were like some sort of psychonic jewels from Zebulon 5, and they have
they made reference
regenerating
that they were
powers. They did, but you can't just say alien and it fixes everything. I'm sorry.
For the same reason that Impact Suit doesn't quite cover the problems that we had with that.
Yes.
It fixed just enough that we're not going to tear it a new one, but not enough that it's...
But Impact
But he's tearing a new one for the gyms.
Impact Suit said... Impact Suit... which says, okay, this suit is designed to, survive an impact. And he says, it's still repairing me. So after you have survived the impact, the suit is designed to fix you after you have been damaged from the impact. I'm fine with that. There's a scientific explanation. The jewels are keeping her alive. They're alien. What? No. Just because they try to explain it away early on by him saying, well, some of these paintings here are from... another world,
which felt like a very random plot thread because he makes the statement. They don't talk about it again until the 4th episode, and then he comes back to it and she's from another planet.
Does it feel like you that the writer got to episode 4 and realized I better put something in earlier and goes back and writes that?
Almost,
that's what
yeah.
it felt like. Like they went back as an afterthought and said maybe we should put this up at the front so it doesn't look so.
See, I almost got the impression that her human look was a disguise for what she truly looked like.
But sure, it was.
And that's why the gems kept her young.
But she was an old hag. She wasn't young at all.
Yeah, she wasn't at this point anyway.
She changed her disguise in order to create the curse. I don't know.
No! It doesn't work.
My memory's not fresh enough to defend this story.
Stones of Venice, and I mean no disrespect, Stones of Venice is poorly written.
I will forgive you for that.
From beginning to end, this thing is poorly written. It's not a well put together story. We start off with an interesting premise that we're dropped into the middle of an adventure that the Doctor and Charlie are having, and I liked that.
Oh,
that
was
not
great.
100%.
That's fantastic. That we don't even know what's happened before
it's just
this.
Blam, and people are shooting at us, and that's what we get for toppling a dictatorship.
Those
or
are
whatever.
fun every once in a while.
When you do that, that's kind of fun.
And I really like the idea of Venice finally sinking,
but it didn't.
But it doesn't.
But the idea that it actually might.
I think
Actually,
a much greater.
If there had been a scientific reason for why Venice has been sinking,
it's been sinking
for so many years.
But it's been. Is it in our lifetime? Has it?
Didn't even go there.
I got the impression
it's been sinking for hundreds of years.
Yeah, it really
600 more years. Who's to say it wouldn't go the rest of the way?
This is like
that's how my mind jumps.
But the problem with this story, the problem with this story is it's not a progression of 600 years. It's been continually sinking. It's like it's sunk like it's sunk like an eighth of an inch in the last 700 years, and then like in the last week, it's like it's gone.
I think
the city's finally going to fall into the sea. How do you measure that? At what point did the scientist come down with his sinkable radar and scan the area and go, "You're hosed.
The floats are going to."
There's nothing we can do. Well, because you're still running around with swords in your Mardi Gras outfit, despite the fact that we have some weird technology by 600 years later.
We've been partying for 100 years that the city's going to sink. Oh, woe is us. We're just going to sit here and sink with it. And just leave the city.
Okay, I did have that thought while listening to it. I was like, well, why don't they just leave?
Why didn't Why didn't Churchwell load up the paintings and get rid of... get him
do
on
it
a boat
beforehand?
Well,
because I'm terribly loyal to the Duke, and the Duke isn't leaving.
I'm sorry, the Duke isn't leaving, but you know what? The Duke was also made it very clear that he didn't give a crap about those paintings.
the Duke or anybody else in the city.
For that matter, yes.
The Duke had spent 100 years waiting for a dead woman. I don't think he's all there. I think at this point, as the curator of the museum and protector of the paintings, you take it upon yourself to go, Duke, your lordship, I'm taking the paintings out of Venice to keep them safe. Just wanted to give you the FYI, they're already gone.
You want to know the saddest
I'm calling
thing?
you from France.
The saddest thing about this episode, this story, it is the most like classic Who.
Oh yeah.
It is
so
formulaic.
classic,
And maybe that's why I did enjoy it a bit more.
This could have been pulled off. Poor production values and all in the 1970s and 80s.
You run
easily
down the list here. We've got political intrigue.
Yes.
As soon as they landed, and I don't even remember who it was, made first reference to the Duke's waiting for his dead beloved to come back. It was like, well, we've got a case of mistaken identity coming up because I know Charlie's going to be suckered into this in some way.
Right.
She's either a dead ringer for this woman, or I just knew right off the bat. We've got a cult that lives in the sewers, and McGann points this out. The Doctor is given such fantastic dialogue.
That lives in the sewers, but a mutated cult that lives in the sewers.
No. Here's the other problem that this story has. If we're going to go there, we're going there now.
I guess
Why are we going to talk about this amphibious group of gondoliers, and then not go anywhere with it? Why are we going to mention that at all? That at one point, for one climactic moment, they're coming up from the waters and dragging people
the
down,
city,
and then suddenly
to take
we're
back
not
the
even
city where it belongs.
We're going to reclaim the city once it sinks.
Such an unrealized storyline,
because that would have been a really cool story.
Absolutely.
If the king and there was a Duke line hadn't continued the way it did,
Agreed.
It would have.
If they had gone, in fact, when I got to that point in the story, I had hope. I thought, okay, here's where we're going with this. We're going to have that's the reason why this is going on. We got these amphibious aliens. I thought it was going to be aliens from somewhere, not
mutated
humans. And I thought, this is where we're going to go with this thing. And then they dropped it, and they never went back to it. And, oh, my God, that falls down. Sorry.
Maybe the amphibious humans were actually offsprings of the vampire fish women.
That's a stretch.
And then the vampire fish women offspring had to breed with humans, and so it slowly degraded.
There he goes with his presumptions again.
No, that's retconning.
That actually makes Vampires of Venice
better.
Believe it or not.
Wow.
So we've got the cult that lives in the basement.
Anymore,
because and like I said, McGann's going on and on and on, goading this guy about, here we are, flickering torchlight. This is more like it. I mean,
yes.
He knows that he's kind of cakewalking through this mess, trying to come up with some nugget of worthwhile audio here.
Right.
And he's struggling to find it. He really is. I agree with you 100%. I think this, to me, was end of the world. We get there. We're on the space station. Rose, this is the day the Earth dies. And I'm like, wow, okay. And then they did it. They blew the planet up. There was no last-minute reprieve. There was nothing that could be done. They blew the Earth up. And they said, Venice is sinking. And I thought, that'd be kind of cool if it actually sank.
Yeah.
Yep. And then it doesn't. It's like, really? We got to... If they had dropped all of the stuff with the Duke and the dead woman and the curse, I didn't care about any of it. I found it boring and derivative.
Unfortunately, that's 80%.
That's 80% of the story. What if Venice had actually sunk? What if they're trying to get out of Venice after it's collapsed under the water and they're moving from air pocket to air pocket, being hunted by amphibians? That's a good Doctor Who story.
That's a great Doctor Who
But
story.
no, we've got cults in the basement dealing with an empty sarcophagus and a woman who's obviously the old lady. She was given one line of dialogue at the very beginning of this story, like 3 minutes in. Oh, you're all waiting for tonight because tonight's the night it all goes down. And I'm like, you're the woman.
I didn't get that.
There was no doubt in my mind.
I got it as soon as they mentioned the
empty sarcophagus. Is when I got it. I went, oh, okay.
As for me.
I looked at Mel and I said, this is who this chick is. And Mel goes, yeah, you're right. And then the sarcophagus is empty. And she says, yeah. And then the Duke goes, I'm going to put you on the throne as a joke while I go investigate the sewers because the city's coming to an end.
You know what I said out loud? I went, oh, ha, ha, funny. Just because it's not.
It's not.
It's ironic.
I think I realized that.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember.
I feel
We are
bad.
tearing this
We are
out so
earlier,
bad.
and I feel bad because somebody really was it Chrissy again that really liked this one because it reminded her of Fifth Doctor.
No, she didn't like this one, but it's because she attributed to the fact that she had just come off of Vampires of Venice and didn't.
Oh, that's right.
that taste
Who
her
was
mouth.
it that liked it? Well, somebody wrote in
Aside
that they
from
liked
me.
it. Other than you.
I don't
Was it
remember
Holly?
anybody.
Nobody
No,
said
I don't
anything
think
about
anybody
I thought
said
somebody
they liked
said,
this one.
well, once again, my memory sucks, but
Well, mine does.
I just...
As far as the old woman reveal, I can't remember if had they set up the missing queen or the dead queen and the curse before they introduced the old woman.
I don't think so. Maybe
Okay.
they did. Well, because he makes the comment when they're on the...
Whichever comes second, I instantly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's who it is.
That's who it is.
I agree with you there. That was totally predictable.
I felt a little bad that we didn't.
And then I felt very justified in the fact that I was right.
I was really hoping for a Shada joke when they're punting.
Yeah.
and it's like he's in the gondola and he's got the pole and he makes some reference about, well, I'm getting the hang of it now.
Yeah.
But I really wanted
It needed more of a
more
hey,
of a
now I'm
punch.
getting the hang of this. You know, it almost the way
Or-
it's
or it
delivered,
could have
it
been
almost ignores Shada.
Yeah.
And that's a
I guess
problem.
technically doesn't exist. So.
But the
Which
problem is
later
no,
comes as
but
an Eighth Doctor adventure.
Yeah, it does.
wait. We're misspeaking here. Shada does not exist in the realm of the continuity of Doctor Who, as it did with Tom Baker and Lalla
That's
Ward.
true.
Yeah.
However, that segment does, where they're on the
It's true,
the
'cause that's part of the
river
Fifth Doctor.
With part of the
Because
Five
it is part
Doctors.
of the Five Doctors, so that still counts. So
I think
that is still a qualifier that's happened before to him
all
in
it
a
needed
previous incarnation.
was the word again.
Yeah, anything could have fixed
that's
that.
all
but
it needed.
Anything
it
could have
comes
fixed it, but
across
it's-
as though we.
It's just a missed
It's not-
opportunity.
yeah,
It's one of those
it
things
totally
that
was a missed
they set it up, and I'm
Yeah.
waiting. It's like he's
I
going
thought
to hit
the
this
same
ball
thing.
out of the park and fix it.
I thought the same thing,
And he didn't.
There were a lot of moments in it that I went, "Oh, okay, here. Oh no, okay, here, no."
It felt like a series of missed opportunities.
It did. It was a whole series.
And
of
then
them.
when we get to the third act is the most agonizing.
I remember the
Because
third act dragging quite a bit.
We're in the palace and we're dealing with the possible hypnotization of Charlie, who's really starting to grate on my nerves now because she's playing along with this for no reason.
Yeah.
She has no.
Well, then she's
they
like,
threatened her.
They threatened
They
her,
threatened
but
her,
they get
but
into the
there's no
palace, and the
real
guy's like,
threat.
"Oh, I'm going to marry you now," and she goes along with this,
Yeah.
and then she turns on the guy later. What did you get me into? What did you think? You had
Yeah,
all these
you went
witnesses
along
that
with
you
it.
could have. You had palace guards there.
And
You could have
there's
stepped
this-
aside at any time and said, "He's the one that's
There's-
behind this. Save me."
There's a thin veil of an excuse there with whatever they gave her to drink, because she talks about not having any control over her legs.
No, you slipped me a drug. You drugged me.
But she everything she said came from her brain. She wasn't. They may have said some sort of hypnotic control over her body, bodily function, body functions, but not.
But maybe the alien jewelry was influencing her from across the room and putting words into her mouth. I don't know. I can't. But the third act, we're there in the palace and we're dealing with all of this boring stuff with this Duke and his dead lover, and then let's go check out the crypt. And it takes 5 hours to get back to the... And we know, the doctor's playing it off like, well, I don't really think you ought to go. You know the thing is empty! Tell them and save us the trip! No, we're going. We're in the boat. Oh, damn it.
Well, and then he gets there and they say, it's emptied. I tried to tell you.
He didn't! He didn't at all!
No, you didn't.
And Charlie, this is the one moment Charlie had the thing. She looks at him and she goes, why didn't you say something? I tried. No, you didn't! Fail, Doc.
Yeah, this...
and this is something I genuinely enjoy about Paul McGann's performance, is that he comes up with, when he gets to those moments where all of a sudden something has clicked for him as the Doctor, and he starts berating himself. Oh, stupid, stupid, stupid Doctor. And we get a couple of them in Storm Warning, and I think there's one in Sword of Orion. Which that was the one. The other disappointment with Sword of Orion was the Cybermat. They kept trying to be elusive with what this bump in the noise was. It's like it's a Cybermat. Move on.
Actually, I thought more of it as a hey, here's a nod to the Cybermats. They are back.
It would have done differently if we'd not heard the Cybermen early. If we'd not heard that one at the end. I think it was at the end of part one that we heard just a little audio clip to it. If it had not been revealed yet, that's who these people were. It would have worked. But the moment you say, rah, 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 and you're going, oh my god, that's a Cyberman, and then there's strange noises and
I was
something
glad to know.
power comes
No,
up.
but I
It's
was
like,
glad to know. I think it was more of a hey fans, we're using Cybermats here. It was not a we're going to build this mystery and you won't know what it is. Oh, surprise, it's a Cyberman. Well, but I don't think that was where they were going.
I think it does, because I think it plays into. You mentioned that this feels like early Cyberman stories.
Yeah.
That in a way, there were elements of this
Again,
that felt very much like.
Again, that's why I think that
Revenge of the Cybermen.
No,
the things
two.
running around Nerva.
2. Oh no, it was Revenge.
Yeah.
Revenge. It was kind of a callback to Revenge. You're right.
But those that don't know the extensive history of the Cybermen, it's still better mysteries than when Daleks show up.
Well, yeah, I'll give you that.
That's certainly true.
I will not dispute that at all. Mainly because it's spoiled in the title 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
The best thing,
or the eye stock shot.
Yeah.
Back to Stones of Venice. The best thing about this story is Paul McGann.
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Paul McGann is the best thing about all three of these.
Yeah, he still is putting forth the best performance.
I'll tell you what,
as the Doctor, it's fantastic.
Since we're beginning to wrap up our conversation about this,
yeah, we're about done because I can't talk about this.
Even Paul McGann can't save the next one. It is absolute crap. If you think you don't like this one,
now I gotta go.
I absolutely loathe the next one. It drug so badly for me.
What is the next?
Minuet in Hell.
Minuet in Hell.
I heard this and I loved this.
I hated this. This
was.
I could not stand this one.
He's back. The brig.
That's the only good part of it. That's the only good part of it. That's the part where I said, "Ooh."
We're going to review this later.
We're getting off the reservation again here, but
that is one of the Big Finish audios that steps out of the comfort zone of Doctor Who, and that's what I appreciate most about it. But that's all I'll say.
I've heard that one it's apparently gruesome or something because they ran a bunch of these.
I'll tell you this: it's Dr. Light
on radio or something, and then. Well, that's where it falls down. Paul McGann's not in it.
Exactly. they give you because these are 4 back to.
We're not reviewing.
We're not reviewing it now. We'll get to it later. We will explain later.
I am passionate about that.
Apparently, Keith's very passionate. And this is fun because it's nice when we don't necessarily all come down on the same side of something.
Yes.
So I think Big Finish is going to inject a lot of arguing into our podcast. I'm excited about that.
I will go back and reconfirm my thoughts on Minuet in Hell before we review it.
Good. You should go listen to it again.
I will. That's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm saying.
I thought you said reaffirm your thoughts or something.
Reconfirm my thoughts.
Reconfirm my thoughts. See, that's all you said, though. You can reconfirm your thoughts by going and reading a synopsis of it. I'm saying you need to go back and listen.
Isn't that implying listening
off the shelf and look at the back of it or read about vampires in Venice?
You're expecting me to presume
that.
Yep,
still hate it. Put it back.
But you know me. If I'm going to go reconfirm, I'm going to go launch or revisit.
Well, obviously, if any of you have listened to these stories and would like to chime in with your own thoughts, we would love to hear them, whether you agree with Glenn and myself on Stones of Venice, or if you agree with Keith. We'd love to hear about it. So send us some feedback. You can find us on the website, which is www.travelingthevortex.com for all you iPod sheep. They're getting us off of iTunes. But we're glad it was available for people that had long trips and forgot their computers. So
yes.
That's cool. I do want to mention that later in this week we're going to release a side trip. Dr. Phil graciously also sent us some audio, which is his review of many of the great Big Finish titles that he enjoys. And it clocked in a bit long, and we felt that it was a little too long to include in an episode. It would just have made this episode mammoth. However, it is also too good to edit, because we had also gotten that option from Phil. He said that if we wanted to edit down to include it, we could do that as well. I've listened to this thing, and he does such a nice job, and it's definitely worth your time. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. It's so worth your time, so definitely download
Especially
it.
Especially if
you
don't know much about Big Finish.
Yeah, it was too good to edit, and really what it is, it's Dr. Phil's highlights of the best of the best Big Finish to a certain point.
I'll
so
guarantee you one thing.
Give it a listen. That'll be out on the feeds.
You went now listen on that list.
Actually, it is. I don't know that
far enough.
I bet Stones of Venice was not.
No, it was not. Only actually 2 of the titles that we reviewed are in that as well. The first 2, Sword of Orion and what was the one before that? I can't ever remember Storm Warning. They're all S's too. But you definitely give it a listen. But it'll be out as a short trip later this week.
Awesome. Well, that's usually my cue for the coming up next.
What's coming up next?
What's
Shaun?
coming up next? We did have a programming change for those of you that may have listened to us previously, or I don't think we really talked too much about it, but I did have a blurb up there that next week's Friday Night Who originally was going to be Seeds of Death with Patrick Troughton. That's been bumped, not too indefinitely, so don't panic. But we've just, in order to make sure that we acquired a copy of it, we moved up to the next one on the schedule. So next week's Friday Night Who, please join us for John Pertwee in The Curse of Peladon, which I'm excited to get back into some Pertwee action. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
That'll be exciting. And then for Keith, our next podcast will actually be reviewing Dreamland and The Next Doctor, because we're going to start working on the specials.
Yay!
So,
more Cybermen.
There's that. If you enjoyed this Big Finish presentation that we've been working on, don't fear. We do plan on doing more Big Finish, and we're going to integrate them a little bit more with our actual old school Who reviews while we're in the wilderness months, waiting for New Who to come back.
Which is going to be a very long wait.
A very long wait at this point. But we do plan on doing more of those, and we will get you further details as they arrive. But I can tell you that coming up, we've got some specials, obviously our reviews of the specials, and Adversary Archive on the Ice Warriors, and then our thoughts on the Time War. Yeah. So there's some nuggets of goodness for you.
Because by that point, we'll have gotten you through the entire new series.
And how cool will it be that at the end of this month, by the end of January, you will have seen all of New Who, and we won't have to worry so much about spoilers at this point.
Yeah, that'll be so nice.
I'm so looking forward to getting
I won't have
through
to
these.
avoid videos on YouTube.
There was a part when I was putting the schedule together. There was a part of me that kind of thought, well, we could push the specials off just a little bit and kind of do some other stuff. And then I thought, why?
No.
So yeah, that's coming up.
Anyway, well, I think that's going to do it for us this week, guys. Until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Shaun.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everyone.
Be seeing you.
I almost went out of order there. I don't know why.
I'm glad you got back in order. We've been doing so good. You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.